Before we begin tonight's story, I'd love for you to take a moment to support the channel. If you enjoy relaxing history like this, please give the video a like and subscribe, so you'll always have a new story ready when you need to unwind. I'd also love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Drop it in the comments below. The first thing you notice is the cold. It seeps into your bones before you are even fully awake, pressing through the thin woolen blanket wrapped around your body. You lie still for a moment, your breath misting faintly in the dim lights, and listen to the house around you. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, a door closes with a hollow thud. From outside, drifting in through the cracked window pane, comes the muffled clip-clop of hooves striking cobblestones. London is stirring, and so must you. You shift carefully on the narrow horsehair mattress, hearing the familiar squeak of tired springs beneath you. The bed is lumpy, patched more than once, but it is a bed all the same, and that is no small thing in this part of the city. You pull the woolen shawl from the bedpost and drape it around your shoulders, the rough fabric scratching against your skin, yet bringing immediate warmth. Beside you in the other narrow bed, your roommate Lily is still asleep. She breathes steadily, lips parted slightly, auburn hair falling in a tangle across the pillow. She is younger than you by some years, but her sleep is heavy, the kind that comes only from exhaustion. The air in the room holds a mixture of scents: cheap lavender water, a hint of smoke from the fire that burned low in the parlor below, and something damp, the smell of wallpaper peeling at the corners. You wrinkle your nose, but after nearly 2 years in this place you hardly notice. These walls are familiar as the rhythm of the house itself. At the small wooden table between the beds sits a ceramic basin and pitcher. The water inside has formed a thin film of ice overnight. You break it with a fingertip, the cold biting into your skin, and splash some on your face. The shock makes you gasp quietly, your breath catching before it steadies again. For a moment, you are wide awake. You sit on the edge of the bed, toes curling against the cold floorboards, and let your shoulders slump. Downstairs, you hear the first stirrings of the household beginning its day. The clatter of coal being shoveled into the parlor grate, footsteps moving steadily, the housekeeper's low, purposeful voice calling someone to fetch water. Soon, coffee will be brewing, its scent drifting upward, and you know you will be grateful for that warmth. Coffee here is real, never chicory. A small luxury that your madam insists upon for the comfort of both guests and girls alike. You draw in a slow, steady breath and look around your room. The wallpaper is faded, patterned with flowers once bright, now muted with years of damp and smoke. The single window admits little light, its glass clouded, streaked with grime that no amount of scrubbing seems to remove. Yet the room is yours, or half of it at least, and that sense of possession, small though it is, matters. This is not the grandest house in London, nor the lowest. A middling establishment, tucked off the Haymarket, frequented by clerks, merchants, officers on leave, enough custom to keep the place alive, but never so much that you are overwhelmed. The madam, Mrs. Cartwright, runs it with precision, balancing strict rules with a measure of fairness. Her house is not cruel, not like some you've heard of, where girls are treated as nothing more than chattel. Here there are routines, expectations, and in exchange, meals, safety, and a bed. You lean back against the wall now, feeling its chill through the shawl, and let your mind drift to the city outside. London, 1857. A place of endless noise and motion. Even now, as the morning deepens, street cries float faintly upward through the windows. A baker calling fresh bread. Somewhere down the lane, the rhythmic song of a knife, grinder announcing his trades. The shuffle of feet as workmen hurry toward their day's labor. All of it reminds you that the world carries on, whether you rest or rise. You close your eyes again, just for a moment, listening. The sounds of the city mingle with the steady breathing of Lily beside you, and you find a strange comfort in the mix. For all the hardships this life has brought, it is still life. Warmth against colds, food against hunger, laughter against silence. It is not what your family dreamed for you, nor what you once imagined for yourselves, but it is survival. Your gaze drifts toward the wardrobe, a small and battered thing against the wall. Inside, your day clothes waits. A plain dress, stockings, sturdy shoes. Nothing remarkable, nothing that would mark you apart from any other working woman on the streets. That is deliberate. Outside the brothel's doors, you must appear ordinary. Respectable houses may bribe the constable to look the other way, but discretion is survival in a city quick to condemn. For now, though, you linger in this quiet moment. Your arms stretch upward toward the ceiling, the simple cotton nightdress falling around your ankles as you ease the stiffness from your body. The stretch draws a long sigh from your lips, a small release of tension you hadn't noticed you carried. Slowly, you settle back, curling the shawl closer around yourself. The house has a rhythm, a pulse you know well. Mornings are slower, meant for rest, cleanings, preparation. Afternoons bring the first visitors, respectable men slipping away from their duties for an hour's escape. Evenings grow louder, more crowded until late into the night. And then, as now in the first hours of dawn, there is quiet. A rare, fragile stillness that you hold onto for as long as it lasts. You let your breath slow, steady, in and out, matching the faint crackle of coal being coaxed to life below. Around you, the city hums and stirs, but in this small room, for just a few more minutes there is peace. You are warm enough, sheltered, and though tomorrow may bring whatever it brings, today begins gently. That is something to be grateful for. The house has its own rhythm, and at the center of it all are the rules. They are not written on paper, nor hung on the wall for anyone to see. They are spoken, enforced, and remembered, carried in the careful words of Mrs. Cartwright, the madam, and in the sharp glances of Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper. Every girl learns them quickly, for forgetting even one can bring a scolding, or worse, dismissal. You learned them 2 years ago, on the day you first arrived, nervous and hollow with hunger. Mrs. Cartwright sat you down in the parlour, her sharp eyes measuring every inch of you as though she could read your entire life at a glance. She spoke in a calm, steady tone that left no room for argument. Cleanliness, punctuality, obedience, discretion. Those were her 4 pillars, and everything else flowed from them. Cleanliness meant more than simply washing your face. It meant your hair was to be brushed, your nails trimmed, your clothes mended, your perfume lightly applied. Gentlemen do not wish to be reminded that you are human, Mrs. Cartwright had said. They wish for the illusion, and you will give it to them. To that end, every girl was required to bathe weekly, no small luxury in London, and to visit the physician who came to the house once every fortnight. There were no exceptions, for health was as much a part of the illusion as a smile. Punctuality governed the days. By noon, every girl must be dressed and presentable, waiting in the downstairs parlour should a guest arrive. Breakfast, such as it was, had to be finished and the rooms tidied before that hour. If you lingered too long, Winters would appear in the doorway with her iron keys jingling at her side, her expression a mask of disapproval. She was not cruel. Not exactly, but she never raised her voice. Instead, her disappointment cut deeper than anger might have done. Obedience, too, was essential. When Mrs. Cartwright gave an instruction, it was not to be questioned. She had built this house, protected it, and kept it respectable enough that the constables turned a blind eye. "You may think you know better," she would say, "but you do not see the dangers I see. You do not hear the whispers I hear." And so, the girls obeyed, not always happily, but with the understanding that obedience meant safety, and safety was precious in this city. And finally, discretion. Of all the rules, this one was most fiercely guarded. You never revealed your true name, not to a gentleman, not even to another girl unless trust was absolute. You never spoke of the house outside its walls. You never gossiped with neighbours. nor told secrets that were not yours to tell. To betray discretion was to endanger everyone, and Mrs. Cartwright would not tolerate it. You pull the shawl tighter around your shoulders now, remembering those first days, the way the rules had seemed heavy, stifling. Yet, over time, they became routine, almost comforting. Boundaries to hold you in place, to make sense of a life that might otherwise feel untethered. This morning, as the house begins to stir, you hear Mrs. Winter's steps in the hallway. Her tread is measured, the sound of heels clicking on worn floorboards. The occasional jangle of keys. She pauses outside each door, listening, making certain the girls are awake, at your doors. She lingers only a moment. Perhaps she heard you moving, or perhaps she knows you are rarely late. The sound of her footsteps fades as she continues down the corridor. From the floor below comes the muffled hum of voices. The younger girls will already be gathering in the kitchen, waiting for their bread and coffee. The cooks, a stout woman with arms like rolling pins, serves the same fare each morning: thick slices of bread, butter if the house is flush, porridge when it is not. Today, the smell of coffee drifts upward, mingling with the sharper scent of coal smoke. You move slowly, stretching, feeling the stiffness ease from your muscles. Dressing takes longer in the morning, when there is no urgency, only the slow ritual of garments layered one atop another. Stockings first, then a plain petticoat, then the corset, laced loosely for comforts. Over these, a simple dress of dark blue wool, worn but serviceable, with a shawl pinned neatly at the breasts. Nothing in your appearance now would mark you as different from any seamstress or shopgirl walking down the street. That anonymity is deliberate, part of the discretion that keeps the house running. By the time you descend the narrow staircase, the parlour fire has been lit. The room glows with its warmth, the coal snapping as it catches. Mrs. Cartwright herself is there, already dressed in a gown of black silks, severe in cut, her hair arranged without a strand out of place. She sits at the edge of the hearth, teacup in hands, her gaze steady on the room as if she can see everything at once. When you enter, her eyes flick briefly toward you, then away again, a silent acknowledgement. The parlour itself speaks of her rules. Though modest, it is kept impeccably neat. The wallpaper is not peeling here. The carpets are brushed, the lamps polished until they gleam. Every cushion is plumped, every chair arranged just so. This is the room the gentlemen see first, and it must always suggest comfort, refinement, a hint of elegance. The other girls gather gradually, each pausing to greet Mrs. Cartwright with a nod before seating themselves. Conversation is quiet, subdued, the murmur of voices blending with the hiss of the fire. Lily appears last, her auburn hair hastily pinned, her cheeks still flushed from sleep. She nearly trips on the hem of her gown as she enters, but Mrs. Cartwright does not scold her, only lifts one brow in warning. Lily blushes deeply, slipping into a chair beside you. Mrs. Cartwright sets down her teacup and clears her throat. "Ladies," she says, her voice calm yet carrying easily through the room. "This is Tuesday, a quiet day usually, but that is no excuse for idleness. The house must be spotless." Voices lowered, faces prepared. "I expect all of you to remember yourselves." Her gaze sweeps the rooms, resting on each of you in turn. "You are not simply women. You are the reputation of this house. Conduct yourselves accordingly." The girls murmur their agreement, a soft chorus of "Yes, ma'am." The rules are not new, yet she repeats them often, as though speaking them aloud weaves them into the very walls. Perhaps it does. You sit with your hands folded in your lap, listening, letting her words settle over you like the shawl on your shoulders. The rules are strict, yes, but they are also steady, a framework in a life that might otherwise crumble. And so you accept them, quietly, gratefully, as the fire warms your face and the day begins. The house is not quiet for long. By mid-morning, the girls are stirring in every corner, voices mingling with the crackle of the fire and the clink of cups on saucers. Some move with practiced grace, already dressed and coiffed, while others shuffle sleepily, shawls pulled tight, hair still tangled from the night. Each one has her own rhythms, her own way of fitting into the house's steady pattern, and together they form the strange family you live amongst. You have learned them well over these 2 years. There is Lily, of course, your roommate, with her auburn hair and shy smile that wins her favor among the younger clerks. She laughs easily, though sometimes you hear her crying softly into her pillow when the day is done. She is quick to hope, quick to despair, and still carries a trace of the factory dust from Manchester in her manner of speech. Then there is Clara, who carries herself like a queen even in her plain morning dress. She is older than most of the girls, perhaps 30, though she never says. She once worked in one of the grander houses near Regent Street, or so she claims, and she has an air about her that lends truth to the tales. Clara is the one the others often turn to for advice, how to rouge the cheeks just enough, how to coax a gentleman's generosity without asking outright, how to keep one's spirits steady. She speaks with a touch of wariness, but also with authority, as though she has walked every path before. Across the parlour by the fire sits Margaret, Maggie, as everyone calls her, barely 20, with dark curls that tumble over her shoulders. She has a mischievous wit that can draw laughter even from the sternest of faces. Yet beneath the sparkle in her eyes lies something sharper, a restlessness that makes her quick to quarrel if slighted. Maggie speaks often of leaving, of finding her fortune on the stage, of travelling far beyond London. Whether she means it, no one can say, but her stories fill the evenings when the house is quiet. There is also Annie, quiet and pale, who seldom raises her voice. She prefers her sewing, mending torn hems and loose seams with a steady hand. Annie came from the countryside, you know, from a village in Kent where the air smelled of grass instead of coal smoke. She rarely speaks of home, but when she does, her words are threaded with longing. The city has not yet shaped her entirely, and sometimes, when you watch her sitting by the window, you wonder if she imagines herself back in green fields under a wide sky. Of all the girls, perhaps the most striking is Frances, tall and fair, with a laugh that rings through the hallways like a bell. She has a way of catching attention without seeming to try, and the gentlemen often ask for her by name. Yet she carries herself with a distance, as though she is always slightly removed from the room she stands in. Some say she once had a patron, a wealthy man who kept her in silk until he tired of her. Frances never confirms nor denies the story. She only smiles, her eyes shadowed, and changes the subject. Together the girls form a shifting tapestry of voices and faces, each with her own stories, her own reasons for being here. They quarrel, they console, they gossip and laugh, and through it all they live under the same roofs, bound together by circumstance if not by choice. This morning, as you sit with your coffee, you listen to their chatter drift around you. Maggie is teasing Lily about a clerk who blushed so fiercely the night before that he nearly toppled his teacups. Clara shakes her head at the tale, her lips curving in a faint smile as she threads a needle to mend her sleeve. Annie is humming softly, a tune that might be a hymn from her village church, though she sings it so faintly it is barely more than a breath. Frances lounges in a chair, gazing out the window with her chin resting in her hand, saying little but drawing glances all the same. You watch them all, and for a moment you feel something almost like belonging. This is not family in the way you once knew it, but it is companionship of a sort. You share meals, rooms, secrets whispered in the dark. You share laughter too, though sometimes it rings a little hollow. And when one of you falls ill, the others gather close, fetching water, tending to fevers, whispering comfort in the long hours of the night. Yet there are rivalries as well. A careless word can spark offense. A favored gentleman can stir jealousy. Money, after all, is always at the heart of this life, and when one girl prospers, another may not. You have seen Maggie and Clara trade sharp words, voices rising until Mrs. Winters appeared, her stern presence quelling the quarrels. You have seen Lily sulk for days when Frances charmed a man she had hoped to claim. These moments pass, but they leave their marks, small cracks in the fragile harmony of the house. Still, beneath the rivalries, there is a quiet solidarity. You are all bound by the same unspoken truth, that society condemns you, that respectability is forever close to you, that you must make do with each other. And so you do. As the morning lengthens, Mrs. Cartwright's voice calls from the doorway, sharp enough to still the chatter. "Ladies," she says, "rooms to be swept, linens changed, floors scrubbed. I will not have dust or disorder. A house that is careless in the morning will be careless in the evening, and that I do not permit." At once, the girls rise, scattering to their duties. Clara gathers a basket of laundry, Frances fetches a broom. Annie disappears to fetch fresh water from the pump in the courtyard. Lily groans softly but follows you up the stairs, her shawl trailing behind her. Together, you strip the beds, shaking out the blankets, smoothing clean sheets over the mattresses. It is tedious work, but it must be done, and as your hands move in practiced rhythms, Lily chatters about her dreams from the night before, something about dancing in a grand hall, dressed in velvets, her laughter echoing through chandeliers. You smile faintly, though you do not answer. Dreams are fragile things in this house, yet you are glad she has them still. By the time the beds are remade and the floor swept, the sun has lifted higher, sending pale light through the narrow window. Dust motes drift in the beam, swirling lazily, and for a moment you pause to watch them. Around you the house hums with activity, voices and footsteps blending into the rhythm you know so well. These are the other girls, the ones who share your days, your nights, your laughter and your silence. They are not family, not exactly, but they are yours, and you are theirs, for as long as this life holds you together. There are certain memories that linger, even when you wish they would not. The first night in the house, the first time you stood waiting in the parlor with your hands folded neatly in your lap, is one of them. It comes back to you sometimes, not in sharp fragments but in a haze, softened by the distance of years. And yet the feeling remains, the weight in your chest, the dryness of your throat, the restless shifting of your hands as you tried to appear calm. It was winter then, as it often seems to be in London. The cold pressed in from every angle, slipping through cracks in the windows, settling into the bones. The house smelled of coal smoke and polish, and every lamp glowed with a faint halo against the gloom. You remember the parlor fires, newly stoked, its warmth licking at your knees as you sat in one of the velvet chairs, your shawl draped carefully around your shoulders. You remember the sound of the clock on the mantel, ticking with unnerving clarity in the quiet. The other girls had been kind enough in their way, though you could feel their eyes on you, measuring, weighing. Each of them remembered her own first night, no doubt, and saw in you the same mixture of fear and resolve that had once marked them. Clara had sat beside you, her presence steady, and murmured words of reassurance. "It will be over before you know it, Mary," she had whispered, using the name the house had given you. "Breathe slow, keep your chin up. They like confidence, even if it's only a show." The doorbell had rung then, its chime echoing through the hall. The sound made your stomach clench, and you recall gripping the edge of your shawl so tightly the threads bit into your fingers. Mrs. Winters had appeared, her keys at her side, to admit the guest. She led him into the parlor with her usual brisk efficiency. He was not remarkable, a man of middling years, perhaps a clerk or a shopkeeper. His coat was worn at the cuffs, his hair thinning, his manner hesitant. He looked around the room with the awkwardness of someone who was both eager and ashamed, as though he wished to be elsewhere even as he stepped forward. He cleared his throat, glanced at the fire, then at the chairs, and finally at Mrs. Cartwright, who rose to greet him. "Good evening, sir," she said with that calm authority of hers. "You are most welcome here. May I present one of our ladies?" Her eyes had turned towards you, and you had felt the weight of her expectation settle on your shoulders. There was no room for refusal now, no chance to change your minds. You rose slowly, smoothing your skirt with trembling hands, and inclined your head as Clara had instructed you. "Good evening," you managed, your voice softer than you intended. The man smiled awkwardly, his gaze flickering from your face to the floor and back again. "It's evening," he replied almost shyly. There was something in his demeanor that steadied you, not menace, not cruelty. Only the fumbling uncertainty of a man unused to being looked at with attention. Mrs. Cartwright, satisfied, gestured toward the staircase. "You may go upstairs. Mary will see to you." Her words carried no warmth but no judgment either. Only business, the smooth continuation of a pattern she had guided countless times before. You led the way, your steps slow and deliberate on the narrow stairs. The sound of his boots followed behind you, steady but hesitant. In the room, you lit the lamp with shaking hands, the flame catching with a faint sputter. You remember how the light fell across the wallpaper, how it gilded the edge of the chipped basins, how it painted shadows across the bed where the blanket was smoothed and ready. For a moment, neither of you spoke. You stood by the windows, your fingers twisting in the fabric of your shawl, and he remained near the door, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Then, with a small cough, he stepped forward. I won't trouble you much," he said, his words stumbling over themselves. It's been some time and, well, the awkwardness of it disarmed you. Somehow, it was easier to breathe knowing he was not the kind of man who swaggered or demanded. Clara had been right. Confidence, even if feigned, was what was needed. So you lifted your chin a fraction, forced a faint smile, and said, "As you wish." What followed was clumsy, hesitant, and over more quickly than you had feared. You will not recall every detail now, nor would you wish to, but you remember the relief when it was done. Relief that it had not been cruel, nor violent, nor anything beyond your strength to endure. Relief that you had survived the first and that you could, perhaps, survive the rest. When he left, he pressed a coin into your hand, more than you might have earned in a week of sewing, and muttered a thank you, almost embarrassed. Mrs. Cartwright accepted the coin with a nod, tallying it in her ledger with no more expression than if she were marking the cost of firewood. To her, it was routine. To you, it was the beginning of a new life, one you had not chosen but had accepted all the same. That night, when the house grew quiet and the lamps were extinguished, you lay awake in your narrow bed, staring at the faded ceilings. Lily slept soundly beside you, her breath steady, her face turned toward the walls. You listened to the faint sounds of the city outside, the distant rumble of a carriage, the bark of a dog, the soft whistle of a watchman making his round. You felt the weight of the coin in the pocket of your dress, and you turned it over and over in your mind. It was food, warmth, survival. It was something you could not have managed on your own. The fear did not vanish that night, but something shifted. You understood then why the girls stayed, why even those who dreamed of escape lingered longer than they intended. It was not glamour, nor pleasure, nor any great ambitions. It was simply that survival, for the first time in so long, felt certain, and so you breathed deeply, slowly, letting the tension drain from your body. The first night had passed, the world had not ended, and though you did not yet know what the years ahead would hold, you knew you would meet them, one night at a time. By day, the Haymarket is a different place than it is by night. The shadows soften, the lamps stand unlit, and the streets swell with a tide of people moving in every direction. It is here, in the daylight, that the true character of London reveals itself, not in whispered words behind closed doors, but in the noise, the motions, the endless current of lives crossing and recrossing like threads in a great loom. The first sound you notice when you step outside is the clatter of hooves. Carriages rattle along the uneven cobblestones, wheels striking sparks where iron meets stone. Some carriages are polished and gleaming, their occupants hidden behind glass, while others are rough and open, carrying goods instead of gentlemen. Drivers call to their horses, whips crack in the cold air, and the rhythm of it all forms a constant backdrop to the city's music. The second sound is voices, hundreds of them, layered and overlapping, spilling into the street from every shop and stall. A woman hawks oranges in a shrill cry, her basket swinging at her hips. A fishmonger shouts his prices above the din, the sharp scent of salt and brine clinging to his wares. Boys dart between the crowds, calling out the day's news from folded sheets of print. Their words tumble into one another, a jumble of headlines about Parliament, scandals, and the latest tragedies along the river. You walk carefully, your shawl wrapped tight around your shoulders, feeling the push and pull of the crowd. The pavement is slick from the morning's frosts, and the hems of skirts darken quickly with the city's grime. Around you, the air smells of smoke, roasted chestnuts, damp walls, and the faint tang of horse manure. It is not pleasant, but it is London, and you have grown used to its constant perfumes. The Haymarket itself is lined with theatres and taverns, their facades brightened by fresh paint or dulled by soot, depending on the prosperity of their owners. Posters plaster the walls, advertising comedies, tragedies, operas, and farces. Bold letters announce the names of actors and actresses whose fame is known across the city, their faces drawn in ink and pasted for all to see. Maggie often stops to read them, dreaming aloud of her own name appearing in such print. During the day, the taverns open their doors to men who drift in for all and companionship, though the real business of the night is yet to come. The doormen lean idly against the frames, watching the street with practiced eyes. They know who passes, who lingers, who might return once the lamps are lit. Here and there you notice women too, some no older than yourselves, some far older, moving through the crowd with an air of practiced ease. They are not dressed for errands or shoppings, though they carry baskets or parcels for show. Their gaze sweeps the street not in idle curiosity, but with intent, catching the eye of men who pass. In daylight, the business of the house continues, though softened, disguised, woven into the ordinary commerce of the city. You walk with Lily at your side, her chatter filling the spaces between the city's noises. She points out the displays in shop windows, the lace at the milliner's, the polished shoes in a cobbler's stalls, the bright ribbons that flutter in the breeze. She sighs over a hat too costly to imagine, then laughs at herself, her breath rising in pale clouds against the cold air. Together, you weave through the crowd, sometimes lingering, sometimes pressing forwards. You know the dangers of daylight as well as those of night. There are constables who patrol the Haymarkets, their blue coats and tall hats marking them out. They walk with slow authority, eyes scanning the faces of women like yourselves. At times they move you along with a brusque word, reminding you that your presence is tolerated, but never welcome. The law calls you a nuisance, a disorderly influence, something to be managed rather than understood. And yet here you are, as you must be. The market stalls are a riot of colour against the grey street. Apples, bruised but bright, glisten in the weak sunlight. Bolts of cloth hang like banners from wooden frames, their colours faded by soot, but still striking against the dull stones. A man selling hot pies calls to you, the steam rising from his cart carrying the smell of meat and pepper. Lily insists on buying once, and you share it with her, the pastry warm against your cold fingers. For a moment, you are simply two young women in a busy city, laughing as crumbs fall onto your shawls. But the illusion never lasts long. A group of clerks passes, their coats buttoned tightly, their boots polished. They glance at you both, some with curiosity, some with disdain, one or two with lingering interest. Lily's cheeks flush, and she lowers her eyes, but you sense her pleasure at being noticed. Attention, even when unkind, is a currency of its own in the Haymarkets. You turn down a narrower lane, where the crowd thins and the noise softens to a low murmur. Here, The houses lean close together, their windows clouded with soot, their doors worn smooth from years of use. Washing lines stretch between the buildings, shirts and stockings swaying gently in the air. Children play in the muck below, their laughter sharp and unbothered by the cold. A woman leans from an upstairs window, calling down in a broad accent to a neighbour. This is the other London, the one tourists and theatre-goers rarely see. The London of cramped rooms and endless labour, where women scrub floors until their hands are raw, and men rise before dawn to haul goods at the docks. It is not so different from where you came, and for a moment you feel the tug of memories. The ache of all that was lost when you left your old life behind. Lily notices your silence and slips her hand into yours. Her fingers cold but steady. "Don't look so solemn," she says with a smile. "The day isn't over yet. We'll have tea at Mrs. Benson's stall before we go back." Her optimism is fragile, but it warms you nonetheless. By the time the sun begins to lower, the street lamps are being prepared for lighting. Boys scramble up ladders, trimming wicks, and setting the flames that will guide the nights. The shops close their shutters one by one, and the crowd changes, labourers heading home, gentlemen arriving for the theatres, carriages lining up for evening fairs. The air grows sharper, touched with the promise of frosts, and the city seems to draw a long breath before the night begins. You and Lily turn back toward the house, your footsteps steady, your shawls pulled close. The Haymarket is never truly quiet, never truly still, but as the day fades, its energy shifts. You can feel it in the air. The hum of expectation, the stirrings of music behind tavern doors, the shadows lengthening across the cobblestones. Daytime has ended. The city prepares for what comes next, and so do you. The bell that signals breakfast is a simple brass handbell, shaken by Mrs. Winters as she makes her way through the house. Its clear chime carries up the stairwells, cutting through the morning murmur of voices, the sound of footsteps on creaking boards, and the occasional laugh from behind half-closed doors. For you, the bell is less a command than a promise. There will be hot food waiting, and with it, the comfort of warmth and company. You wrap your shawl around your shoulders and make your way downstairs. The wood cool under your feet, even through your stockings. The smell greets you before the sight does. Fresh bread, still steaming, mingling with the earthy aroma of porridge and the sharper tang of coffee. Not the watery substitute brewed from roasted chicory roots, but true coffee beans, ground and boiled in the kitchen's big iron pot. Mrs. Cartwright insists upon it. Gentlemen notice such things, she often says, though the truth is that the girls notice them too. The dining room is not grand, but it has a homeliness that eases the edges of fatigue. The long wooden table, scarred with years of use, is covered in a faded cloth patterned with roses. Mismatched chairs scrape against the floor as women find their places. Light seeps through lace curtains at the windows, softened by the soot that clings to the glass. The air is warm, filled with the hiss of the kitchen fire and the low hum of conversation. You take your seat beside Lily, who is already buttering a thick slice of bread. She pushes the plate toward you, her smile bright despite the lingering shadows of sleep. Across the table, Maggie is spooning sugar into her porridge with a kind of determined cheer, as though sweetness might carry her through the day. Meals here are simple but steady, and in their own way they feel like a luxury. Porridge thickened with milk, sometimes dotted with raisins when the kitchen can afford them. Bread baked fresh each morning by a boy from a nearby bakery, its crust golden and soft within. On better days there is bacon or kippers, their salty richness filling the room with scent. Today there are eggs, boiled, their shells cracked open and yolks bright against the whites. You peel one carefully, sprinkling a pinch of salt over the top before taking a bite. The warmth spreads through you, banishing the last of the morning chill. Around you, the women talk in low voices, their words weaving in and out of laughter. Conversation at the table is rarely about customers, that belongs to the evenings, when stories flow as freely as wine. In the mornings, talk is of practical matters: who needs a ribbon mended, whose shoes require repair, which of the younger girls is feeling under the weather. It is ordinary, almost domestic, and for a little while it feels less like a brothel and more like a household of sisters sharing what life allows them. After breakfasts, there is time for small rituals of care, those modest indulgences that Mrs. Cartwright insists upon. You are selling an illusion. She reminds you, her sharp eyes narrowing, if she sees a girl neglect her appearance. And illusions must be polished until they shine. In the washroom, the air is filled with steam, rising from kettles of hot water. You dip a cloth into the basin, the warmth soothing against your skin as you wipe away the chill of the morning. Soaps, faintly scented with lavender, lathers between your fingers, leaving your hands softer than they were. The mirror above the basin is spotted with age, its silver backing faded at the edges, but it is enough to see your reflection clearly. You smooth your hair, winding it back into neat coils, and rub a touch of beeswax across your lips to soften their chapped surface. There are other luxuries too, small things, but treasured. A tin of face powder kept on the shelf, to be used sparingly. A ribbon tucked into a drawer, chosen with care for evenings when a touch of colour is required. A bottle of rose water, its scent sweet and fleeting, dabbed at the wrists before stepping into the parlour. These are not riches, but they are enough to create the illusion Mrs. Cartwright demands, and sometimes enough to create comfort for yourself as well. You remember the days before you came here, when luxuries were beyond imagining. A meal was crusts of bread, hard cheese, and weak teas, eaten in silence at the end of a long day's sewing. Baths were rare, warmth rarer still, to have hot food twice daily, to have soaps, clean linens, and even the occasional sweetmeat offered at the table. These are privileges you did not expect to find. They cannot erase the realities of your work, but they soften the edges, make the days easier to bear. By midday, the house is quieter. Some girls rest in their rooms, others read or mend garments in the parlour. You join Lily at the table with needle and threads, stitching a tear in her sleeve. The fabric is worn thin, but your fingers move quickly, the skill of your former trade still sharp. She thanks you with a smile and offers you a boiled sweet from a paper twist she keeps hidden in her pockets. You let it melt slowly on your tongue, the sharp tang of lemon bright against the taste of porridge still lingering from breakfasts. Later in the afternoon, there is tea. Mrs. Winters brings out a chipped teapot, its spout slightly crooked, and pours the amber liquid into mismatched cups. The scent fills the room, comforting in its familiarity. A plate of currant buns sits at the center of the table, their sugar-crusted tops catching the light. You break one in half, the dough soft and warm, and sip your tea in slow contentment. It is in these small moments, the sharing of food, the warmth of tea, the smoothing of hair before a mirror, that life in the house feels almost ordinary. They are the threads that weave stability into days otherwise marked by uncertainty. They are the luxuries that remind you that, despite what the world may call you, you are still a woman deserving of care, of comfort, of the dignity found in simple things. And when the evening comes, when the lamps are lit, and the parlour fills with smoke and laughter, it is these quiet luxuries that give you strength. You have eaten, you have rested, you have tended to yourself. The world may demand illusions, but beneath them lies something solid, a body warmed by food, a spirit eased by ritual, a heart steady enough to face the nights. Every Thursday morning, the rhythm of the house shifts. The usual chatter around breakfast is quieter, the laughter softer. The movements of the girls more deliberate. It is inspection day, and though everyone knows the ritual well by now, a faint unease always lingers in the air. The brothel's doctor arrives shortly after 10, a tall man with a heavy overcoat and a leather bag that creaks when he sets it down. His name is Dr. Hammond, though most of the girls simply call him the doctor. He is not unkind. but he is brisk, efficient, and never lingers longer than necessary. He smells faintly of tobacco and camphor, and his manner carries the detached calm of a man who has seen far more suffering than he can recount. The inspections are held in the upstairs sitting room, a space usually reserved for sewing or quiet reading. On Thursdays, however, it is transformed into a place of routine examination. A table is pushed to one side. The curtains are drawn back to let in as much daylight as possible, and a fire is lit in the grate to keep away the chills. The girls wait in a line along the hallway, shawls wrapped around their shoulders, each called in one by one. When your turn comes, you step into the room and offer a polite nod. Dr. Hammond barely glances up as he gestures toward the chair. His notebook rests open beside him, pages filled with neat, looping script that tracks the health of the house week by week. He asks questions in a low, steady voice. Have you had any fevers? Any pain? Any sores? You answer as simply as you can, aware that Mrs. Winters stands in the corner, arms folded, listening carefully. The inspection itself is swift. He checks your pulse, presses lightly against your stomach, peers at your throat and eyes, makes notes in his book. Sometimes he asks you to open your mouth. Sometimes he listens to your chest. His hands are cool but not rough, his expression unreadable. When he finishes, he closes his notebook with a firm snap and nods toward the doors. Next. He says, already preparing for the girl behind you. It is not a pleasant ritual, but it is necessary. Illness spreads quickly in houses like this, and Mrs. Cartwright insists upon vigilance. She says it is for the sake of the girls. And perhaps it is, though you know it is also for the reputation of the house. A brothel known for sickness would soon find its doors empty of customers. In this way, health is both a duty and a business investment. Once your inspection is complete, you step back into the hallway, the shawl pulled close against, and take your place among the others who have already finished. There is relief in their faces, though none speak it aloud. A girl who fails inspection might be sent away for a week or longer, depending on her ailment. Some never returns. It is a quiet fear everyone carries, tucked just beneath the surface of daily life. The doctor continues down the line, his voice steadies, his bag opening and closing with soft clicks of leather and brass. Maggie emerges from the room with a pale face, though she insists she is fine. Lily whispers that her heart always beats faster on Thursdays, no matter how well she feels. You nod, knowing the feeling yourself. By noon, the examinations are complete. The sitting room returns to its ordinary state, the table pushed back into place, the fire allowed to burn low. Dr. Hammond collects his fee from Mrs. Cartwright, then departs with his bag swinging at his side. The house exhales, as though everyone has been holding their breath all morning. The girls drift back to their rooms, to the parlour, to the kitchens, each carrying a little more lightness now that the ritual has passed. In the kitchen, a pot of soup simmers on the stoves, its scent filling the air. You sit with Lily and sip slowly, the warmth easing the tension from your shoulders. Conversation begins again, first in cautious fragments, then in full voices. Someone jokes about the doctor's solemn face, and laughter ripples around the tables. For a little while, the unease is forgotten. Later in the afternoon, you find yourself thinking about the inspection again. Victorian medicine is a strange mix of wisdom and guesswork. The newspapers speak of great advances, new hospitals, discoveries about the bodies, even whispers of anesthesia and antiseptics. Yet for all that, doctors remain uncertain, their knowledge incomplete. Illness still carries mystery, and cures are often little more than hope wrapped in Latin words. You recall once reading about the Contagious Diseases Acts, laws that allow police to arrest women suspected of spreading infection and subject them to compulsory examinations. The thought makes you shiver, for there is little dignity in such treatment. Here, at least, Mrs. Cartwright arranges for inspections with some measure of care and privacy. It may be imperfect, but it is far kinder than what others endure. In the evening, as the lamps are lit and the parlour fills with smoke and laughter, the memory of the doctor fades. The men who visit know nothing of the morning's ritual, and you do not tell them. To them, you are simply part of the illusion, healthy, polished, and ready to entertain. The truth, with all its unease and uncertainty, belongs only to you and the other women who share the house. And yet, beneath it all, you feel a kind of gratitude. However brisk, however impersonal, the doctor's visits offer a thread of stability. They remind you that your body, fragile though it may be, is watched over in some small way. In a life where so much is uncertain, that knowledge offers a measure of comfort, like the warmth of soup on a cold day, or the softness of a shawl against your shoulders. When you finally climb into bed that night, the memory of his cool hands and steady voice drifts away, replaced by the familiar sounds of London outside your window. The city murmurs, the house settles, and you allow yourself to sink into the mattress, your breath slow and steady. Inspection day has passed, and with it, the week begins anew. When evening settles over London, the true business of the house begins. The lamps in the parlour are lit, their light softened by fringe shades that cast a warm glow over the wallpaper. Coal burns steadily in the grates, filling the room with comforting heat. The curtains are drawn tight, shutting out the busy streets, and the furniture has been arranged to suggest comfort without clutter. Armchairs, a low sofa, and a table set with a decanter of brandies. The air grows heavier as the night deepens, not unpleasant, but rich with smoke, perfume, and the faint clink of glass. It is at this hour that the house begins to fill, not all at once, but steadily, like water rising in a basin. Men arrive in twos and threes, sometimes alone, rarely in great crowds. They step through the front door and pause a moment in the hallways, stamping their boots against the mat, shaking off the damp of the night. Mrs. Cartwright greets them with practiced charm, her smile polite, her manner just warm enough to encourage, but never so soft as to lose authority. The gentlemen themselves come from all walks of London life. The most common are clerks, young men in neat coats, their hands ink-stained from ledgers and letters, their shoulders hunched from long hours bent over desks. They arrive quietly, often glancing about as though fearing they might be recognized, and once inside they are relieved to be treated without judgment. For them, the brothel is a place of release, not only in the way society whispers about, but in the sense of escape from endless columns of numbers and the weight of small salaries. Then there are the soldiers, their boots heavy, their manner bold. They are louder, more inclined to boast, though their bravado often softens after a drink or two. Many have seen far more than they can say. India, the Crimea, postings in distant lands, and though they swagger, you sometimes catch the shadow of wariness in their eyes. They speak of battles and barracks, of comrades lost, of the long stretches of boredom punctuated by sudden violence. Some laugh too loudly, others drink too quickly, but beneath it all lies a hunger for comfort, for warmth, for a reminder of homes. Bank clerks and minor officials also find their way here, men with steady wages and ambitions that stretch further than their current stations. They are careful, sometimes calculating, as though measuring the value of every interaction. Some come regularly, preferring familiar faces and routines. Others treat their visits as indulgences to be spaced far apart, a rare sweetness against the steady rhythm of respectability. And then there are those who defy easy description, the lonely wanderers, the older men who come without pretense, the travellers passing briefly through London's chaos. They sit quietly in the parlours, sip their brandy, and ask gentle questions about the weather, the theatre, the books on the shelf. Their visits are not hurried, nor do they always carry expectation beyond companionship. For some, the presence of a listening ear is worth more than anything else. You learn, in time, to read these men before they speak. Their clothes, their postures, the way they glance at the floor or meet your gaze directly. Each detail tells a story. A hat carried rather than worn may signal nerves. A coat smelling faintly of tobacco and horses suggests travel from afar. A voice too loud might cover insecurities, while silence may mask shyness or sorrow. The art of the house is not only in appearances, but in the ability to see and respond to these subtle signs. The parlour hums with conversation most nights. The crackle of the fires, the rustle of skirts, the low timbre of men's voices. Together, they form a kind of music. No one speaks openly of the world beyond these walls, though it hangs always in the background. Politics, wars, scandals, all are left outside, replaced by the simpler topics of theatre performances, cricket scores, or the latest invention shown at the Crystal Palace. A man might arrive burdened by the weight of his day, but here he is drawn into lighter talk, encouraged by smiles and the warmth of the rooms. Among the visitors, certain regulars stand out. There is Mr. Phillips, the bank clerk, who never tires of showing his collection of stamps, carefully pasted into an album he carries with him. He speaks of each one with the delight of a boy, explaining the designs, the rare prints, the colours. You listen, nodding at the right moments, and find a strange comfort in his devotion to something so harmless, so earnest. Another is the nervous young man who calls himself Smith, though you suspect it is not his real name. He always arrives just after supper, stays no more than a quarter of an hour, and departs with a hurried bow. He speaks little, and his hands tremble as he fumbles with coins for payment. You cannot help but feel a flicker of pity for him, caught between desire and fear, drawn to the house yet ashamed of it. There are others. An aging barrister with kind eyes who quotes poetry from memory, a tailor who praises the stitching of your dresses, a sailor who brings tales of faraway seas. Each has his habits, his manners, his place in the quiet theatre of the brothel. And though society may condemn them, here they are simply men seeking company in their own ways. The girls, too, have their favourites and their dislikes. Around the breakfast table, the talk sometimes turns to the men of the night before. Maggie laughs about the soldier who fell asleep mid-conversation. Lily blushes when she mentions the tailor with the clever compliments. There is a camaraderie in these shared stories, a sense that the men are not strangers entirely, but familiar characters in the ongoing play of life inside the house. And yet, for all their variety, the gentlemen share one thing in common. When they cross the threshold, they step into a space apart from the rest of the world. Here, the rules are different, softer, more forgiving. Their worries can be set aside, if only for an evening. And you, in turn, become part of that illusion, listening, smiling, offering not just what they came for, but something gentler too, the feeling of being seen, if only for a moment. When the night ends, and the last visitor departs into the fog, damp streets, the parlour grows quiet once more. The fire burns low, the glasses are gathered, and the curtains are drawn back to reveal the sleeping city beyond. You sit for a moment in the silence, reflecting on the faces of those who came and went, on the brief intersections of lives that touch and then part again. It is a curious thing. You think how many stories pass through a single house in London, and tomorrow there will be more. By daylight, the house is plain enough. The wallpaper shows its age, the carpets hold faint stains that no brush will ever fully erase, and the furniture, though polished, bears the scuffs of long use. Yet when evening comes, and the lamps are lit, the house transforms. Shadows soften the floors. Firelight glimmers across the gilt frames of the mirrors, and the scent of perfume drifts through the rooms like an invisible veil. It is not magic exactly, but it feels near to it. The same transformation happens with the women. By day, their hair is loose, their faces bare, their dresses simple and practical, but as night approaches, the ritual begins. A careful layering of fabric, colour, and scent designed to craft an illusion of effortless beauty. The process is deliberate, even meditative. Each stroke of a brush, each fastening of a clasp is part of the larger theatre of glamour. You begin with the face, a small pot of powder, chalky and pale. waits on the dressing table. The powder softens the skin, dulls the shine, and under lamplight gives the impression of smooth perfection. Rouge follows, a dab at the cheeks, subtle yet deliberate, as though to suggest a natural flush. Some prefer more, some less, but all understand its importance. A touch of colour at the lips completes the effects. The mirror reflects a face not entirely different from your own, but heightened, arranged, prepared for the gaze of others. Next comes the hair. Combs, pins, ribbons, and brushes lie scattered across the table like the tools of a painter. Some choose elaborate styles, curls pinned high with jeweled combs, while others prefer loose waves that fall across the shoulders. Scented oils are rubbed through the strands to add shine, and a ribbon or flower may be tucked in as a finishing touch. To the women themselves, it is simply hair, stubborn and heavy, often tiring to manage. But to the gentleman, it appears as a silken crown, effortlessly alluring. Then, the dresses. Silk and satin, velvet and lace, gowns of deep crimson, soft blue or shadowy blacks. Some are stitched with sequins that catch the light, others with delicate embroidery along the hem. Corsets are laced tightly, pulling the waist inward, lifting the figure. Stockings are drawn up the legs, garters fastened with small, secret snaps. Every element is chosen not for comfort but for effect. To wear such clothing is not always easy. It pinches, constricts, and warms too quickly. But the mirror reveals the reward: a figure transformed, a body sculpted into elegance. Jewelry provides the final notes. Earrings that glimmer as the head turns, necklaces that rest at the hollow of the throat, rings that catch the light when a hand lifts a glass. Few of the jewels are truly valuable, yet under lamplight they sparkle convincingly. Pearls, paste diamonds, gilt bangles, each piece adds to the illusion. No one asks where they came from, whether purchased, gifted, or borrowed. It is enough that they shine. Perfume completes the ritual. Small bottles with glass stoppers sit upon the table, each containing a different essence: rose, lavender, violet, jasmine. Just a dab at the wrists, at the throat, behind the ears. The scent clings to fabric, lingers in the air, and creates an aura as invisible yet as potent as any jewel. Some women choose heavy, musky scents, others prefer something light, a mere suggestion. The perfume is not for the self, but for the atmosphere it creates. Part of the enveloping spell of glamour. When all is prepared, the women gather in the parlour. The transformation completes. The effect is striking. What were moments ago ordinary rooms now glitter with colour and light. The dresses shimmer. The jewelry catches fire in the lamplight. The perfume mingles with the smoke of cigars. To the gentleman entering through the front doors, it is as though they have stepped into another world, a world of beauty and refinement, untouched by the soot and fog of the London streets outside. Yet beneath the surface you know the truth. The rouge smudges if touched too carelessly. The corset pinches until the breath comes short. The jewels are glass. The perfume will fade by morning, leaving only the faint smell of powder behind. The illusion is delicate, fragile, held together by the labour of steady hands and practiced routines. Still, it works. Night after night it works. Sometimes, as you sit before the mirror, you study your own reflection with a kind of quiet wonder. You see both versions of yourself at once, the plain figure in daylight and the adorned figure in lamplight. Neither is false, and yet neither is entirely true. The glamour is not meant to deceive, but to transform, to take what is ordinary and lift it into something heightened, something luminous. The house itself plays its role in this transformation. The velvet curtains, the polished silverware, the carefully arranged furniture, all contribute to the performance. Even the fire in the grate is part of the spell, its light smoothing away shadows, its warmth softening the sharp edges of the room. The illusion of glamour is not the work of any one woman, but of the entire setting, each detail combining to create an atmosphere where beauty feels inevitable. There are moments, too, when the illusion extends beyond the walls of the house. Stepping outside in full dress, you feel the eyes of passers-by upon you. Some stare with admiration, others with disapproval, but all notice. For those brief steps between the brothel and the carriage, the glamour clings like a second skin, turning even the damp London street into a kind of stage. It is fleeting, yes, but no less real for that. When the night is done, the glamour unravels. Pins are pulled from hair, corset laces loosened, rouge wiped away with a damp cloths. The gowns are hung carefully back in the wardrobe, the jewels return to their boxes, the perfume bottles stoppered tight. The illusion dissolves, leaving behind tired faces, tender ribs, and the quiet murmur of women returning to themselves. And yet, there is a satisfaction in the ritual. The glamour may be fragile, but it is powerful while it lasts. It changes not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. In the mirror's reflection, for a few hours each night, you become something radiant, untouchable, beautiful beyond the limits of the everyday. That is the heart of glamour, not permanence, but transformation. As you lie in beds, the scent of perfume still faint in your hair, you think of the house now resting in silence. Tomorrow the ritual will begin again, and once more the plain rooms and tired faces will transform into a world of velvet, jewels, and light. The illusion will be woven anew, and for those who enter, it will seem as though it has always been so. To a gentleman entering through the front doors, the brothel appears a place of elegance. Lamps glowing, curtains draped, perfume hanging sweetly in the air. Yet beyond the parlour, past the polished wood and the velvet chairs, lies another world entirely. It is a world of soap and starch, iron pots and damp linens, coal scuttles and clattering footsteps. These are the spaces behind closed doors, the engine rooms of the house where glamour is made possible. The kitchen is the heart of it. Tucked at the back of the building, it never sees the light of day except through a small, soot-streaked window above the sink. The air there is always warm, fragrant with stews, bread, or boiling water. Mrs. Winters rules this space as firmly as she rules the hallways. Her sleeves are always rolled, her hair tied back, her hands busy with a spoon or knife. Pots bubble on the iron range, kettles hiss and rattle, loaves of bread rise under damp cloths. It is not luxury, but it is steady nourishment, and the women are grateful for it. The laundry room is smaller, but just as important. Buckets of water stand lined against the wall, steam rising as hot sheets are beaten and scrubbed, soap flakes floating on the surface. The smell of carbolic soap is sharp, clinging to the hands and clothes of whoever draws laundry duty. Gowns are sponged carefully, corsets wiped down, stockings rinsed and pegged to dry. The work is endless. Every night leaves behind crumpled sheets, soiled towels, and garments in need of freshening. It is not glamorous work, but without it, the illusion upstairs would quickly fall apart. Up another flight of stairs are the small storage rooms. Here, coal is stacked in neat piles ready to feed the fireplaces. Candles are stored by the dozen, along with bottles of lamp oil. There are shelves of linens folded and sorted, as though never enough to feel abundant. Boxes of rouge, powder, and perfume bottles sit carefully labelled, replenished each month by a discreet supplier. These supplies are the unseen backbone of the house, each object quietly maintaining the performance of knightly elegance. The women's bedrooms, though plain, are perhaps the truest spaces of all. They are narrow rooms with faded wallpaper, iron bedsteads, and small wardrobes for day dresses. A chipped pitcher and basin stand on a washstand. A shawl hangs over the bedpost. A comb lies beside a cracked mirror. There is little here that could be called luxurious, but there is comfort in the familiar clutter. A pair of mended stockings folded neatly. A ribbon pinned to the wall, a book tucked beneath a pillow. In these rooms the women shed the corsets and rouges, speaking to one another in softer voices, their laughter unguarded. Sometimes, the house seems like two separate worlds, the glittering front rooms and the practical back ones. A gentleman sees only the firsts. The polished parlour, the warmth of the fire, the curve of a jewelled necklace. He does not hear the clatter of pans in the kitchens, nor the splash of water in the laundry. nor the murmur of women discussing the price of coal or the best way to mend a hem. Yet without the second world, the first could not exist. On quiet mornings, when the lamps are extinguished and the parlour lies still, you find yourself lingering in these back rooms. There is something soothing in the rhythm of them. The swish of a brush across fabrics, the creak of an iron door, the soft scrape of coal being shoveled into the scuttle. These sounds are the pulse of the house, steady and grounding, reminding you that life here is not all performance. Sometimes the women help with the chores, though it is not required. Maggie enjoys polishing the silver, claiming it relaxes her. Lily will sometimes scrub stockings, humming under her breath as she works. You yourself have taken a turn at mending gowns, the familiar feel of needle and thread bringing back your days as a seamstress. There is comfort in this work, even if it is unseen by the men who visit. It belongs to you, part of the private life of the house. Even the corridors hold their secrets. The front hall is bright and tidy, its carpets brushed and its lamps kept polished. But the back staircases, the ones used by the staff, are narrow and dark, smelling faintly of coal, dust and damp stone. Here, the wallpaper is peeling, the wood worn smooth by countless hands. It is a different house entirely, one never glimpsed by outsiders. At night, when the parlour fills with laughter and smoke, the back rooms remain steady and unchanged. The laundry waits, the kitchen simmers, the coal glows in the scuttles. Sometimes you step quietly into the kitchen to fetch a slice of bread or a mug of tea, grateful for the warmth and the silence. The glamour of the front rooms may dazzle, but there is comfort in these hidden spaces where no mask is required. The contrast between front and back is striking, yet not unpleasant. It reminds you that glamour is a crafted thing, carefully tended and supported by countless small tasks. It does not diminish the illusion to know how it is made, rather it deepens the appreciation. Like watching a play, one can marvel at the stage lights and costumes, while still admiring the ropes and pulleys behind the curtains. When you return to your bedroom at the end of a long night, you close the door softly and sit upon the narrow beds. The sounds of the house continue around you. The creak of stairs, the faint clatter from the kitchen, the wind against the window panes. You breathe slowly, letting your body sink into the mattress. Here, in this plain little room, you are simply yourself. The gowns and jewels are hung away, the rouge wiped from your cheeks, the glamour resting until tomorrow. The house, with all its layers, public and private, polished and plain, settles into quiet around you. Behind closed doors there is no performance, only the steady rhythm of life continuing, unseen but essential. It is a comfort knowing both worlds exist together, side by side, each giving meaning to the other. If the brothel has a soul, it is not found in the velvet curtains or the polished silvers. It lives instead in the quiet laughter between women, in the whispered confidences passed across narrow beds, in the small gestures of kindness that stitch each day together, in a life so often judged and misunderstood by the world outside. Friendship within the house becomes a lifeline, a thread of warmth woven through the fabric of routines. Your roommate Lily is perhaps your closest companion. At night, when the lamps are extinguished and the house lies hushed, the two of you speak in low voices across the darkened room. She tells you of her childhood in Manchester, the roar of the textile looms, the way the noise rang in her ears long after she left the factory floor. You share with her memories of sewing by candlelight, the prick of the needle, the long hours bent over fabric. In these late night conversations, you are not Mary and Lily, the names chosen for work, but yourselves, two women with histories, hopes and fears. There are small rituals of friendship that bring comfort. In the mornings, when the basin water is icy, you sometimes heat it over the fire before Lily wakes, so she need not feel the sting of cold against her face. She, in turns, mends your stockings when your fingers are too sore from the needle. These small acts speak louder than words, affirming that even in a house built on illusion, care between women remains genuine. Maggie, older by a few years, carries herself with a motherly air. She fusses when someone coughs, insists on sharing spoonfuls of broth if a girl looks pale, and always seems to have a ribbon or trinket tucked away to brighten a mood. She tells stories, too. Tales of the Irish countryside where she was born, of green hills and wild rivers. Her stories are embroidered with exaggerations, but no one minds. They are like lullabies, soothing after long evenings, carrying the listeners away to places far beyond the suit of London's. Then there is Alice, quiet and observant, who writes little poems in the margins of old newspapers. Sometimes she reads them aloud in a hesitant voice, her cheeks flushing, and the other girls clap gently in encouragement. Her words are simple, but they capture the tenderness of the life around her. The glow of lamplight on a friend's face, the sound of rain against the windows, the comfort of a shawl shared on a cold night. In a house filled with performance, Alice's poetry feels like a secret truth. The friendships are not without quarrels, of course. Tempers flare when the house grows crowded, or when exhaustion gnaws at patience. A snapped word, a slammed door, a pair of earrings borrowed without asking. These things spark tension. Yet the quarrels rarely last. So much are shared: meals, rooms, the very air you breathe. That forgiveness comes quickly. Life here is too close, too fragile, to let grudges linger. Sometimes the bonds show themselves in laughter. After a long night, when rouge still clings to cheeks and corset laces are half undone, someone makes a joker, a mimicry of a gentleman's pompous manners, or a playful imitation of Mrs. Winter's stern frown, and laughter ripples through the room. The sound is unrestrained, joyous, filling the air with a warmth stronger than any fire. In those moments, you remember that even in hardship, joy can bloom. There are also times of sorrow, and it is in those moments that friendship shines most clearly. When one of the girls receives bad news from home, a father gone, a sister ill, the others gather close, offering tea, silence, or simply a hand held tightly. When illness strikes, the women sit at a bedside in shifts, smoothing hair from a fevered brow, murmuring words of comfort. These acts are not grand, but they are vital. They remind each woman that she is not alone, no matter how harsh the outside world may be. The bonds extend beyond the walls too. When two women walk out together, whether to market or chapel, they share not only baskets and errands, but also the shield of companionships. Side by side, they feel stronger, more secure against the curious eyes of strangers. In the crowded streets of London, their laughter forms a small bubble of belonging, fragile but real. Late at night, when the parlour is finally quiet and the house begins to settle, you sometimes pause to reflect on these friendships. They are, in many ways, the truest part of life here. The glamour fades, the customers depart, the lamps are extinguished, but the bonds remain. They are not forged of silk or rouge, but of shared hardship and small kindnesses, of whispered stories and gentle laughter. You think of the world outside, the harsh words in newspapers, the cold glances in the street, and you realize how little it understands of this place. Outsiders see only sin or shames, but they do not see Maggie tucking a blanket around Alice's shoulders, or Lily combing your hair with careful patience, or the circle of women gathered close around a sick bed. These are the truths that exist behind the painted smiles, truths that give strength and dignity to lives too often dismissed. As you lie down, the sounds of the house softening into silence. You feel Lily shift in the bed beside you. She murmurs a drowsy word, and you answer with a quiet laugh. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own routines, but tonight you rest in the comfort of friendship. The room is small, the blankets thin, yet the warmth of companionship fills the space, steady and reassuring. And so, within the walls of the brothel, amid the smoke and laughter, the powder and the rouge, blossoms a different kind of beauty. It is not for sale, nor is it part of any illusions. It is the beauty of friendship, resilient, tender, and utterly real. When the lamps are extinguished, and the house settles into its nightly hush, thoughts often wander to the world outside. The streets of London may be crowded, filled with hawkers, carriages and children darting between horses' hooves. Yet for women of the brothel, there is a sense of invisibility mixed with exposure. Everyone knows such houses exist, yet respectable society speaks of them in whispers or not at all. It is a paradox, present and unseen, condemned yet relied upon. Stigma clings like the city fog, seeping into every crack. Newspapers thunder about the ruin of virtue, sermons decry fallen women, and charitable pamphlets urge reforms. Yet the same society that shuns the women by day sends its men to their doors by night. The contradiction is plain to those who live it, though it is rarely spoken of directly. Better to laugh quietly, to keep one's composure, to focus on the tasks at hand. Venturing out into the wider world can be the hardest part. When walking to the market for bread or coal, you keep your shawl close, your head bowed. Most passers-by pay no attention, but occasionally a glance lingers, sharp with disapproval. Sometimes a muttered word follows, a hissed shame, or a knowing smirk from a group of young men. These moments sting, even if brushed away quickly. Yet the women learn small strategies to walk together, to move with dignity, to focus on the errand rather than the eyes of strangers. Among themselves, the women discuss these judgments in quiet tones, usually late at night. Lily, always sensitive, sometimes wonders aloud what her family would think if they knew where she lives now. Maggie shakes her head at the hypocrisy of it all, her voice firm, insisting that survival carries no shame. Alice, with her soft-spoken poetry, writes lines about the strength it takes to live openly in a world that prefers shadows. These conversations do not erase the sting of stigma, but they soften it, reminding each woman she is not alone. The brothel itself becomes a kind of refuge against outside judgments. Within its walls, no one whispers the word fallen. Here, names are exchanged freely, laughter fills the rooms, and dignity is preserved in small rituals. Clean gowns, hot meals, the weekly inspections. It is not a perfect sanctuary, but it is one where the women feel a measure of safety, where their worth is not reduced to harsh labels. At times, encounters with outsiders reveal both cruelty and kindness. There was once an afternoon when you and Lily visited a nearby apothecary. The shopkeeper, recognizing your place of residence, sniffed loudly and raised his eyebrows, yet he still sold you the remedies you needed. Another day, an elderly woman in the market pressed an extra apple into your hand without a word. Moments like these stay in the memory. The sting of rejection, the balm of unexpected compassions. Both remind you how complicated the world's judgment truly is. There are also charities, often run by earnest ladies, who speak of rescuing women from lives of sin. Their intentions may be sincere, yet their words often feel heavy, laden with pity rather than understanding. Some of the girls have tried these charitable homes, only to find themselves treated as children, stripped of independence, forced into strict routines. Returning to the brothel, they speak of the relief of reclaiming their own choices, however limited those choices may seem to others. The stigma is not only external, it seeps inward too. Some nights, lying awake in the darkness, you wonder whether the harsh words of the newspapers are right, whether respectability is forever lost. But then you remember the alternative, the hunger of your days as a seamstress, the gnawing emptiness in your stomach, the cold of a room without coal. In that light, the choice feels less like shame and more like survival. Slowly, you learn to measure yourself not by the world's judgment, but by the kindness you give and receive, the friendships you nurture, the dignity you maintain in small, daily ways. Over time, the women develop their own quiet strength against stigmas. They share jokes about the gentlemen who posture so solemnly in public yet return again and again in private. They remind one another that morality preached from pulpits rarely fills an empty stomach. They hold their heads high when walking through the streets together, shawls wrapped like armor, steps steady against the current of disapproval. Sometimes when you look into the mirror at night, you see both sides reflected back at you. The painted figure society condemns, and the quiet woman who longs simply for warmth, safety, and a measure of peace. Both are true, yet neither tells the whole story. The truth lies in between, in the unspoken resilience required to live beneath the weight of judgment. And so, coping with stigma becomes a daily practice, as steady and ordinary as lacing a corset or buttoning a gown. It does not disappear, but it is managed, softened, shared. Within the house, laughter and friendship build a shield against it. Outside, dignity and composure serve as armor. And in the private stillness of night, breath by steady breaths, you remind yourself that worth is not granted by society, but found in the quiet strength of survivals. As the lamps burn low and the house drifts into sleep, you let the day's judgments fade into the distance. Beyond the walls, the city may gossip and scorn, but within your narrow room, there is warmth beneath the blanket, friendship only a whisper away, and the steady comfort of knowing you are not alone in this life. Money, more than romance or reputations, quietly shapes the rhythms of life inside the brothel. It is the reason most of the women are here. The silent engine that keeps the lamps burning, the coal bin filled, and the supper table sets. In a world where options are scarce and wages meager, the promise of steadier coin lures women from factories, laundries, and sewing rooms into this dim but gilded interior. The contrast with former livelihoods is stark. As a seamstress, your days were filled with aching fingers and poor light, the needle pricking your skin for pennies earned. Even the hardest week of stitching scarcely bought enough bread to banish hunger. Here, though the hours are long and the work taxing in its own way, the wages are undeniably better. A week's earnings can cover rent, foods, and clothing that once seemed luxuries. Yet the money is never entirely your own. A portion goes to Mrs. Winters, the keeper of the house, who takes her share for lodging, meals, and protection. Another slice vanishes into gowns and cosmetics, for appearance is part of the trade and cannot be neglected. What remains is yours to guard carefully, tucked into a purse or hidden in a small wooden box beneath your bed. Some women spend freely, drawn to ribbons, perfumes, or trinkets in shop windows. Others hoard each coin, saving toward an imagined future where they might open a small shop, or at least secure a quieter lodging away from the bustle of the house. Conversations about money weave through the evenings like an undercurrent. Over supper, Maggie might sigh that she spent too much at the market, while Alice wonders whether she dares put aside a few shillings for paper and ink. Lily, ever hopeful, speaks of saving enough to send a parcel of coins to her younger brother. Each dream is shaped by the clink of coins in a palm, by the knowledge that money opens doors, even as it slips so easily through fingers. There are lessons, too, in cautions. More than one girl has been swept away by the flattery of a generous patron, only to discover that promises of gifts or steady support vanish as quickly as they are spoken. A handful of banknotes pressed into a palm may feel like security, but it can also breed disappointment when it disappears with the man who gave it. The women learn to trust in what they can hold and count themselves, not in what is pledged over champagne. Still, small luxuries matter. A silk ribbon tied at the throat, a cake purchased from the bakery, a candle lit just for the pleasure of its glow. These things soften the edges of life. They are reminders that money can bring not only survival but also moments of beauty. Alice treasures her notebooks, their pages slowly filling with verse. Maggie delights in a brightly patterned shawl that catches the lamplight. You, too, feel the lift of pride when slipping into a well-fitted gown, knowing it was purchased with your own earnings. There are darker tales whispered as warnings, of women who drank away their wages, of those who trusted men to keep their savings only to be abandoned, of girls who borrowed too freely and found themselves trapped in debts. Such stories ripple through the house like ghostly reminders, urging caution even as the coins burn hot in the purse. Mrs. Winters, practical if stern, sometimes gathers the girls to remind them of the importance of thrift. Money, she declares, is your best protection. Guard it as you would your very life. For many, money represents more than security. It carries the dream of freedom. Some imagine leaving the city altogether, perhaps to return to a country village or to start afresh in another town where no one knows their names. Others hope for a small business, a tea shop, a millinery, a rooming house. The dreams vary, but the common thread is escape. A future beyond these red, draped walls. Coins saved quietly in boxes, and purses are tokens of that hope, each one a step toward a different life. At times there is frustration too. Despite better wages than factory work, the expenses of the house, fines for lateness, deductions for gowns, fees for food, chip away at savings. Just when the purse feels heavy, it seems to lighten again. Yet, even the act of earning gives a sense of agency that the women lacked before. To be able to pay for one's own bread, to choose a ribbon or a pair of shoes without begging or borrowing, grants a quiet dignity. Money also shapes the relationships between women. Generosity is common, a shilling lent to cover a doctor's visit, a coin slipped into a friend's hand after a lean week. These debts are rarely written down, but they are remembered with gratitude. Just as often, laughter rings out when someone spends foolishly. On an extravagant hat, perhaps, but beneath the teasing lies affections. The shared understanding that everyone is trying to find balance between necessity and desire. In quieter moments, lying awake in your narrow bed, you sometimes hold a few coins in your hand, feeling their weight. They are small, ordinary things, yet they carry with them survival, dignity, and the fragile hope of something more. You think of the long hours at the sewing table, the endless hunger, and you know that these coins are not just metal. They are a measure of freedom, however modest. As the house grows still, you slip the coins back into their hiding place. Tomorrow will bring new earnings, new choices, new temptations. The cycle of money never ends, but within it lies the possibility of change. For now, it is enough to know that you are not empty-handed, that your purse holds the means to keep warm, to eat well, to dream of a gentler life. And so, amid the velvet drapes and candlelight, money becomes more than currency. It is both anchor and horizon, keeping you rooted in the present, while pointing toward the possibility of a future beyond the brothel's walls. Amid the bustle and wear of life inside the brothel, the women carve out small havens of peace. These moments of gentle escape may not seem grand, but they are the threads that keep spirits from unraveling entirely. In the hush between visitors or in the quiet hours of the morning, they find ways to soften the world, to breathe a little more deeply, to remind themselves that they are more than the roles they play. Books are one of the most cherished escapes. A handful circulate through the house, their pages thumbed and spines softened from much handling. A battered volume of Dickens passes from hand to hand, its stories of poor but noble characters striking a familiar chord. Alice, with her fondness for verse, reads aloud by lamplight, her voice gentle and steady as the words lift everyone beyond the narrow walls. Even those who cannot read well listen closely, carried by the rhythm of poetry into landscapes of imagination. For a few precious minutes, soot and cobblestones fall away, replaced by meadows, castles, or even just a quiet country lanes. Other women prefer the solace of needle and thread. Though sewing once meant drudgery for survival, it now offers a meditative rhythm. Maggie embroiders bright flowers onto scraps of cloth, her fingers moving steadily, her expression softened into calm. The act is less about necessity than beauty, a quiet rebellion against the plainness of life. The needle slides through fabrics, and with each stitch, she creates something delicate in contrast to the harshness outside. Watching her work can be soothing in itself. The gentle rise and fall of her hands, the emerging patterns blossoming under lamplights. Some escapes lie not in objects but in simple routines. A slow walk to the market, shawl pulled tightly against the chills, can feel like a journey into another life. The streets, busy with vendors and children, offer a kind of anonymity. Blending into the crowds, a woman might imagine herself simply another passerby, not marked by her work or her house. She lingers at a stall of oranges, their sharp scent cutting through the smoky air, or pauses to admire bolts of cloths, her fingers brushing the texture as though considering a future purchase. Even if nothing is bought, the act of looking, of choosing, grants a taste of freedom. Tea, too, is a ritual of retreat. When the kettle hisses and the steam curls upwards, the room fills with warmth and comfort. The cups may be mismatched, the leaves not the finest, but the act of pouring and sipping transforms the moment. The women sit close, hands around warm chinas, voices lowered as though guarding the quiet. Conversation flows gently. Memories of childhood gardens, songs half remembered, or musings about what lies beyond London's endless streets. These talks are not of customers or wages, but of softer things, dreams spun out like the steam itself. Laughter becomes another escape, bubbling up when least expected. A shared joke about Mrs. Winters' stern expression, a playful mimicry of a pompous visitor, or even a silly dance step performed in stockinged feet. These sparkles of mirth ripple through the house. For a time, the walls echo not with duty but with joy. The sound is a bomb, lifting heavy hearts and reminding everyone that they are still capable of delight. Sometimes the women simply rest, stretched across their narrow beds in the afternoon quiet. They watch the shifting patterns of light as it filters through curtains, or trace the cracks in the ceiling plaster with half-lidded eyes. Breathing slows, tension unwinds, and the body remembers what it means to be still. In these drowsy interludes, they drift into daydreams, walking barefoot in grass, hearing the sea against a distant shore, sitting by a fire in some imagined cottage. The mind, unbound for a while, carries them gently away. Music finds its way into the house, too. A small pianoforte sits in the parlour, slightly out of tune but serviceable. On quieter afternoons, Lily plays simple melodies, her fingers hesitant yet tender on the keys. The notes ripple upward, imperfect but sweet, filling the rooms with softness. Sometimes Alice hums along, her voice blending with the chords, creating a harmony that soothes even the weary. Music lingers like a memory afterward, the echo of it carried in the mind long after the keys fall silent. Nature, though scarce in the crowded city, offers its own gifts. A potted geranium sits on the windowsill of the upstairs halls, its red blooms bright against the soot-streaked glass. The women tend it carefully, watering it in turns, marveling at each new leaf. It becomes more than a plant. It is a sign of persistence, of life thriving even in confined spaces. On rare Sundays, one or two of the women venture further, walking to the edge of Hyde Park where grass and trees spread wide. To stand beneath a canopy of leaves, to feel the ground softened with moss, is to breathe differently. They carry that memory back with them, a quiet treasure tucked into the heart. There are escapes in memory too. Around the fire, stories unfurl of mothers singing lullabies, of brothers chasing across fields, of festivals lit with lanterns. These recollections are shared like gifts, offered freely and received with gratitude. Listening to them, one might close her eyes and almost feel the warmth of her own childhood again. It's a thread of continuity reminding her that she is not only who she is now, but all she has ever been. And so the escapes, books, music, tea, laughter, sewing, nature, memory, are woven into the fabric of daily life. They are not extravagant, but they are essentials. Each gentle act provides a space to breathe, to step beyond the boundaries of circumstance, to remember the fullness of beings. Within them lies a resilience that cannot be bought or sold. As evening falls and lamps are lit, the house prepares again for its nightly trades. Yet the women carry within them the softness of those escapes, the laughter that still hums in their chests, the story that lingers in their minds, the thread of embroidery winding toward beauty. They return to their duties steadier, fortified by those brief sanctuaries of peace. And you, lying back against your pillow, might feel it too, that even in the most crowded, smoky corners of Victorian London, there were moments of quiet, of warmth, of escape. The women cherished them as you now cherish this stillness, letting your breath deepen and your body sink into calm. Behind the velvet curtains and flickering lamps, life in the brothel is woven not only from coin and custom, but also from secrets. They drift through the house like smoke, some whispered willingly, others carried heavily, never spoken aloud. Trust, in such a world, becomes both fragile and essential. Without it, the women would be left adrift in a sea of loneliness. With it, they create something close to family. Each woman carries her own story, though few reveal it fully. A name is often the first secret laid aside. The girls choose softer, brighter names to suit their trade: Lily, Alice, Maggie, Rose. You are Mary here, though that is not the name your mother once called you. The chosen names act as a kind of shield, protecting the person underneath, allowing a separation between the work and the self. Within the house, the women respect those shields. Rarely does anyone press too hard for a real name unless the other chooses to share it. Late at night, when the fire burns low and the noise of London fades, confidences sometimes slip free. A woman might admit to missing the fields of her childhood, or to sending letters to a younger sister who knows nothing of her current life. Another might confess a lingering fear, a cough that will not leave, or a patron who unsettles her. These admissions are not made lightly. They are gifts, fragile as glass, placed in the hands of another with the hope they will not be broken. Among the women, there are unspoken rules about trust. Secrets shared in whispers must remain whispers. Betrayal, though rare, cuts deeper than almost anything else. To guard each other's truths is to preserve the delicate harmony that makes the house livable. When someone does falter, perhaps repeating a story to the wrong ear, there is hurt, sometimes anger, but more often quiet withdrawal. The bonds of trust once frayed are not easily mended. Trust is tested not only in words but in actions. A coin lent in hardships, a shift of work covered when illness strikes, a warning given when a troublesome visitor lingers too long. These things matter. They say more than oaths ever could. The women learn who will keep faith not by what is promised, but by what is done when need arises. Even the staff beyond the women carry secrets. Mrs. Winters, stern though she is, once hinted at her own younger days in service, her eyes softening as she spoke of a household she left long ago. The Madam, Mrs. Cartwright, reveals little of herself, but the sharp way she watches certain men suggests her past holds shadows she would rather not summon. The walls of the house seem almost heavy with the weight of unspoken histories, each one a thread in the tapestry of survival. There are lighter secrets too, tucked between the heavier ones. Small crushes confessed with a giggle, stolen sweets hidden in bedside drawers, the mischievous swapping of ribbons or hairpins. These little confidences, though trivial, bind the women together just as surely as deeper revelations. Sharing them is a way of saying, I trust you with this piece of myself, even if it is only a scrap of laughter. Sometimes secrets are shared in silence. A look exchanged across the supper table, a hand resting briefly on another's arm, a shawl draped over shoulders without a word. In those moments, trust does not need to be spoken. It is felt in the warmth of the gesture, in the quiet assurance that someone sees and understands without asking questions. But trust is always precarious. The world outside does not look kindly on women in this trade, and betrayal could mean ruin. A careless word to a customer, a letter intercepted, even a rumor passed beyond the walls could unravel carefully guarded lives. And so secrecy becomes second nature. Faces are schooled, stories rehearsed, and emotions hidden behind practiced smiles. Within these defenses, trust shines all the brighter when it appears. For you, Mary, trust has become a lifeline. Lily confides in you often, her youth seeking steadiness in your listening ears. She tells you of her dreams, sometimes fanciful, sometimes heartbreaking, of owning a shop, of marrying a kind man, of seeing the sea for the first time. You do not mock her or remind her of the odds stacked against such hopes. Instead, you hold her dreams carefully as though they were fragile glass birds. In return, you sometimes share your own quieter truths, memories of your mother's songs, the ache of your brother's absence, the comfort you find in the rhythm of sewing. These exchanges are not dramatic, not shouted from rooftops. They are whispered at nights, softened by candlelight, threaded through laughter and tears. They are what make the brothel bearable. Without them, the women would be little more than strangers sharing walls. With them, they become something closer to kin, bound not by blood but by shared survival, by the delicate weaving of secrets and trusts. As you sit now, by the faint glow of a dying fire, listening to the steady breathing of those around you, you feel the weight of both silence and connection. The secrets in this house are countless, yet they are held in balance by the quiet strength of trust. You know that tomorrow will bring new burdens, new laughter, perhaps new confessions. And you also know that whatever comes, you are not alone. For in this world of half light and whispered truths, trust is more than a comfort. It is the invisible thread that binds the women together, keeping them steady against the weight of judgment and the passing of time. And so, with secrets safely kept and trust quietly shared, you let your own breath deepen, your body soften into rest. Outside, the city still churns with noise and smoke, but here, in the stillness of the house, you are held by bonds unseen yet strong, the kind of bonds that whisper gently. You are safe enough to sleep. The brothel may feel like a world unto itself, enclosed by velvet curtains and familiar voices, but outside those walls the law casts a long shadow. Prostitution itself is not technically illegal in Victorian London, yet nearly everything surrounding it lies under scrutiny: soliciting in the streets, disorderly houses, public nuisance. In practice, this means the women and their keepers live in a constant dance with authority, never entirely secure, always cautious. For the most part, the house runs quietly enough to avoid notice. Mrs. Cartwright is careful, keeping accounts in neat order and ensuring the house appears respectable from the outside. Curtains are drawn, noise is kept to a murmur, and comings and goings are staggered to avoid drawing a crowd. Yet even so, the presence of law cannot be escaped. A uniformed constable passes by at least once a night, his boots striking the pavement with steady rhythms. Sometimes he lingers just long enough for the women inside to fall silent, waiting until his steps fade into the distance. The police are not always enemies. Some are indifferent, content to look the other way, so long as the house causes no disturbance. Others expect small payments, fines, they call them, though no court is involved. A discreet envelope passed to a watchful constable can smooth over many potential difficulties. Mrs. Cartwright calls it the cost of doing business. The women simply accept it as another deduction from their earnings. It's part of the hidden machinery that allows the house to keep running. But there are moments when the law intrudes more sharply. A sudden knock at the door, the kind that rattles hinges, sends a shiver through the house. It might be nothing more than a patrol seeking confirmation that the establishment is in order. Yet it might also be an inspection, demanded without warning. On such occasions, the women are expected to appear calm, composed, even cheerful. Rooms must look tidy, the parlour orderly, no sign of excess drink or unruly behaviour. The entire house becomes a stage, performing respectability for men in uniform who hold power over their fate. The women speak often of the hypocrisy of it all. Brothels are tolerated, even relied upon by many men of standing, yet condemned when convenient. A magistrate who thunders against fallen women. By day may himself visit a house by night. The contradiction is clear to everyone within the walls, though rarely spoken aloud. To acknowledge it is to admit how precarious the balance truly is. Stories circulate of houses less careful than this one. Raids in the East End where doors were broken down, furniture overturned, women dragged into the street to be jeered at by onlookers. Charges filed not only against the keepers, but against the women themselves, their names printed in newspapers for all to read. The shame could destroy what little protection they had, severing ties with family or friends, who might still have looked kindly upon them. Fear of such exposure lingers always at the edges of thought. Even when raids are rare, encounters with the law leave traces. A brusque constable demanding to know a woman's name, a sneer from a passing officer, the sharp reminder that society sees her as both necessary and disgraceful. These moments stinks, not only for their harshness, but for the way they confirm what the women already know, that they exist in a fragile space, permitted yet despised. There are subtler interactions as well. Sometimes an officer will linger too long, his questions drifting beyond duty into intrusion. A woman may be asked for favors in exchange for leniency, the implied threat clear in his tone. In such cases, the women rely on Mrs. Cartwright's sharpness, her ability to confront with just enough authority to send the man away without offense. She knows how to balance firmness with diplomacy, how to wield her own kind of power in a world that rarely grants it to women. Despite the tension, life goes on. The women learn to adapt, to read the signs of when to be cautious, when to remain unseen. They step carefully when outside the house, walking briskly, avoiding eye contact with patrolling officers. They rehearse answers in their minds, simple, respectable sounding phrases to offer if questioned. Every small precaution becomes a thread in the net of survival. And yet, within the house, they sometimes speak with wry humor about the whole arrangement. Over supper, Maggie might mimic the pompous tone of a constable demanding silence, her impression so perfect that laughter spills around the table. Humor becomes a shield, a way of reclaiming some measure of power. For a few moments, the law is not an oppressor, but a figure of fun, its authority punctured by shared mirth. Still, beneath the laughter lies understanding. The law is not simply a nuisance. It is a reminder of how fragile the women's lives are. A raid, an arrest, even a harsh word printed in the paper could change everything. The balance they walk is delicate, requiring vigilance each day. As you think on this, lying back against your pillows, the sound of London drifting faintly through the walls, you feel the tension ease slightly. The house has survived so far, guided by caution, softened by trust. The constables may pass, the laws may loom, but inside these walls life continues, woven from resilience and care. In the end, the encounters with the law are less about open battle and more about endurance. The women learn to bend without breaking, to remain steady even under scrutiny. They hold fast to each other, to their routines, to the small sanctuaries they build within. And in that steadiness lies their quiet defiance, a refusal to be reduced to fear, even when the knock at the door echoes like thunder. So the law remains a shadow, sometimes heavy, sometimes distant. But within the brothel's walls, the women breathe, laugh, and dream despite it, their lives carried forward on whispers and courage. And you too can let the thought settle gently, that even under watchful eyes, there is room for quiet endurance, for calm, for rest. In a house where the body is both livelihood and burdens, illness is a constant presence. It creeps quietly, sometimes beginning with no more than a sniffle or a dull ache in the chest. Yet in the close air of the brothel, sickness spreads swiftly. A cough rattling through one room soon echoes in another, and fatigue in one woman often leaves extra work for the rest. Health, fragile as it is, becomes one of the house's most precious resources. The simplest ailments arrive first: colds that leave the women weak and congested, fevers that sap their strength, headaches that make the glare of the lamps unbearable. In such moments, work cannot simply stop. The house must continue, and Mrs. Cartwright is pragmatic about it. She allows a woman to rest only if another can take her place. Yet, beneath this hardness, there is room for care. One woman will bring broth to another, another will sit at the bedside, dabbing a cool cloth to a fevered brow. These acts of kindness are not commanded but offered freely, born of the understanding that tomorrow the roles may reverse. Worse than common illness, however, are the deeper ailments that haunt the trade. Venereal disease, though rarely spoken of directly, lurks in the background of every encounter. The women know its signs. The rash that does not heal, the sharp pains, the fatigue that lingers too long. Fear of infection weighs heavily, yet remedies are few and unreliable. Some swear by tinctures sold by apothecaries, others by home brewed cures whispered from one woman to the next. Most of these offer only false comfort, but even that comfort can be a balm in a world with so few options. Not all ailments are visible. Weariness of the spirit settles just as heavily as coughs or fevers. Nights without sleep, the toll of endless performance, the ache of loneliness, all leave their mark. Some women retreat into silence, their laughter growing rare, their eyes distant. Others grow short-tempered, snapping at small things, only to apologize later with wary shame. The brothel, for all its noise and bustles, does not easily allow for quiet healing of the heart. Yet the women do what they can, a hand resting briefly on another's, a whispered reassurance, a song hummed softly to soothe the restless thoughts. Among them, certain women take naturally to the role of nurse. Maggie is one such figure. Quick with a pot of tea, skilled at coaxing broth from scraps, her touch steady when others are shaken. She seems to carry within her an endless patience, though even she admits to exhaustion when sickness lingers too long. Others follow her leads, imitating her care, finding small ways to ease each other's burdens. In this, the brothel becomes less a place of mere business and more a fragile community, bound together by necessity and compassion. Mrs. Winters, too, though stern in most matters, shows unexpected gentleness when illness strikes. She will scold a woman for shirking her duties one day, then the next be found sitting by her bedside, knitting quietly so that the patient does not feel alone. She has no great remedies to offer, but her presence itself is a kind of medicine, steady, unflinching, reassuring. When illness grows serious, fear grips the house. A lingering cough can bring whispers of consumption, that dreaded wasting disease that seems to claim so many in the city. The sound of it, wet, rattling, relentless, fills the rooms with dread. No one speaks openly of what it might mean, yet everyone knows. If a woman grows too weak, she may be sent away, for the house cannot afford to carry her. In such cases, the bonds of care are tested. Some women, fearful for themselves, keep their distance. Others stay close, unwilling to let a sister face suffering alone. The choice is never easy. Sickness also exposes the fragile line between the women and the outside world. Doctors are costly, and many refuse to treat women of the trade at all. A few sympathetic ones exist, often in poorer districts, but reaching them requires money and trust. More often, remedies are bought from chemists, powders, syrups, and pills of questionable values. Some soothe for a while, others do more harm than good. The women become their own healers, piecing together knowledge from experience, rumors, and instinct. Through all of it, care takes many forms, some grand, others almost invisible. A shawl draped over shoulders, a blanket tucked tighter in the night, a shift taken on by a friend so that another may rest. Even laughter becomes medicine. When spirits sags, someone will tell a story mimicking a pompous customer or inventing a wild tale, and for a while the room brightens. The laughter may not cure, but it lightens the burden, reminding each woman that she is not alone in her struggle. For you, Mary, illness stirs old memories. You recall tending to your brothers when they were feverish, your mother's firm yet gentle way of coaxing them back to health. That memory guides your hands now. You find yourself caring for Lily when she falls unwell, holding her head as she drinks, humming softly to ease her rest. It is tiring, yet also grounding. In those moments, you feel a connection to your past, a reminder of the strength and tenderness that still live within you. Illness will always haunt the brothel. It cannot be banished, only endured. But in the enduring, the women find something more than survival. They find the quiet strength of care, the knowledge that even in frailty they can lean on one another. The body may falter, the spirit may tire, but compassion threads its way through the house like a lifeline, binding them together. And so, when night falls and coughing echoes faintly down the corridor, you do not feel despair alone. You feel the presence of others, women who will bring water, who will sit in silence, who will stay through the darkest hours. Illness may weaken the body, but care strengthens the bonds that hold the house steady. In the end, that care becomes a kind of medicine of its own. It cannot cure every sickness, nor fend off every loss, but it carries the women through. It softens the harshness of the trade, reminds them of their shared humanity, and offers a measure of peace even in pain. And with that peace, however fragile, comes rest. Though much of life in the house is bound to routine, there are moments when the monotony lifts, replaced by something warmer, something lighter. Festivities, grand and humble alike, sprinkle themselves through the years, marking time in a life that otherwise risks blending into one endless string of nights. Some celebrations follow the calendar. Christmas, for instance, cannot be ignored even here. By late December, the streets of London are strung with garlands of holly, and the sharp scent of pine lingers in the air. At the brothel, Mrs. Cartwright insists on a tree, though it is never large and often somewhat crooked. The girls decorate it with ribbons, scraps of lace, and bits of tinsel saved from years past. A candle or two flickers carefully among the branches, casting a soft glow that makes even the peeling wallpaper seem momentarily grand. For that night, the rules relax. A goose or turkey is roasted. Mugs of mulled wine are passed around, and for a few hours the house feels less like a workplace and more like a home. Laughter rings louder on those evenings. Games are played. Cards dealt with feigned solemnity, forfeits carried out with dramatic flares. Lily once recited a poem so exaggeratedly that everyone dissolved into giggles, unable to breathe for laughing. Such memories linger long after the season passes, tucked away, like treasures to be brought out when the nights grow heavy again. Other holidays, too, are marked in small ways. May Day brings flowers gathered from markets or plucked from hedgerows, woven into crowns that the women wear about the house. On Shrove Tuesday, pancakes are flipped in the kitchens, their sweet scent drifting upstairs to the rooms. Even birthdays are remembered, sometimes with no more than a ribbon tied prettily around a small cake, but always with song and warmth. These moments do not erase hardships, but they brighten it, like a patch of sunlight breaking briefly through cloud. Beyond formal festivities, the women create their own occasions of joy. A customer brings a box of sugared almonds. The girls gather to share them, laughing at sticky fingers. A parcel arrives from a distant town with letters and small gifts. It is opened ceremoniously, each trinket examined and admired. Even the finding of an old music sheet in the market can spark delight. As one of the girls picks out the tune on the house's battered piano, and the others hum along, filling the parlor with melodies. Sometimes joy is found in even smaller gestures. Maggie, ever resourceful, once made a batch of toffee from leftover sugar, wrapping it in bits of paper so each woman had her own portion. The taste was simple, but the thought behind it made it sweeter still. On quieter afternoons, Lily might plait another's hair into intricate braids, or someone would stitch a bit of lace onto a worn collar, transforming the ordinary into something lovely. These acts, modest though they are, serve as reminders life can still hold beauty, even here. The brothel itself has its ways of joining in the city's pulse of entertainment. When fireworks light the sky on bonfire nights, the women crowd at the windows, craning to see the bursts of colour over rooftops, their faces momentarily gilded by sparks of gold and reds. Sometimes a fiddler or accordion player is hired for the evening, filling the rooms with music, and for a while the women dance together, skirts swishing, feet tapping on the boards. Customers may watch or join, but the laughter belongs to the women themselves. Joy is not only in spectacle but in rest. On rare days when work is slow, the women will sprawl in the parlour, feet tucked under them, sipping tea and telling stories. These stories often grow grander with each telling. A simple walk to the market becomes an epic adventure. A small encounter with a stern matron turns into a tale of daring escape. The embellishment is part of the pleasure, each exaggeration greeted with playful groans and applause. Storytelling binds them, giving them shared laughter that carries long into the night. And there are the quiet joys, those that arrive unannounced and slip away softly. The rare morning when sunlight streams through the grimy window, warming the floorboards. The comfort of lying abed a little longer, wrapped in a shawl, listening to the muffled sounds of the city awakening outside. The first taste of fresh strawberries in summer, their sweetness sharp and fleeting. These are not planned, but they nourish the heart nonetheless. For Mary, these moments of festivity and joy form a counterbalance to the weariness of the trade. They remind you that life is not only survival, but also connection, laughter, and celebrations. You recall vividly the Christmas when Lily sewed a small sachet filled with dried lavender and tucked it beneath your pillows. The scent lingered for weeks, calming and gentle, reminding you of fields from your childhoods. That simple gift meant more than any coin pressed into your hand. The women, in their own way, create rituals of resilience. Each holiday or moment of festivity becomes a marker in memory, a way of saying we were here, we lived this day, and it held not only hardship but also light. These rituals knit the women closer, reminding them that though society may look upon them with disdain, they are capable of building joy within their walls. Even Mrs. Cartwright, whose eye for profit is rarely clouded, seems softened during these times. She allows the wine to flow a little more freely, overlooks the late rising the next morning, and even joins in the toasts with a rare smile. She knows as well as the rest that joy has its place here. A house without it would quickly grow cold and unbearable. And so the year rolls on, marked not only by toil but by its festivities, both large and small. The women hold on to these moments, cherishing them as proof that even in the midst of a life often judged harshly, they can laugh, sing, and celebrate. Joy is fragile, yes, but it is also enduring, and it glimmers even in unexpected places. As you close your eyes and let the memory of these celebrations settle, you realize that joy in all its forms is a kind of rebellion. It says we are more than what the world believes of us. We are capable of laughter, of love, of finding delight in the smallest ribbon or the grandest fireworks. And in that realization comes a sense of peace. In a city as vast and restless as Victorian London, reputation travels faster than footsteps. Its words slip from lips to ears, weaving themselves into stories, some half true, others wholly invented. For women in the trades, rumour is both weapon and wound, shaping lives with invisible threads. A whispered tale can open doors or close them forever. Inside the brothels, gossip is a kind of currency. The women trade it as readily as they do combs or hairpins, passing along tidbits of news about customers, rival houses, or each other. Some of it is harmless. Who fancies whom? Who received the most generous gift? Who snored loudly after wines? Lotta follows such stories, smoothing away the sting of long nights. Yet other whispers cut deeper. If a woman is said to be careless with her cleanliness, or too free with her affections outside the house, her reputation can tarnish quickly. Customers may avoid her, and colleagues may keep their distance. Mrs. Cartwright is acutely aware of the power of rumour. She guards the house's reputation with the vigilance of a general. Respectability, even in this line of work, is her shield. The house must appear orderly, the women well kept, the customers discreet. Any hint of scandal beyond what is expected could draw unwanted attention. From police, from neighbours, or from society's self-appointed moral guardians. For this reason, Mrs. Cartwright quashes gossip that might harm the house, reminding the women that their livelihood depends upon the illusion of decorum. Beyond the walls, the city itself hums with whispers. Customers speak to one another in clubs and taverns, recounting their visits with a mixture of pride and discretion. Some exaggerate, making themselves seem more daring, others downplay, fearing discovery. In either case, the stories travel, shaping the reputation of the house. A single gentleman's praise can bring in new patrons. Equally, a careless complaint can dissuade others. The women understand this, which is why many cultivate not only their appearance but their manner of listening, making each man feel valued, his secrets safe. Yet rumors are not confined to customers or colleagues. Society at large tells its own stories about women in the trades, stories woven into newspapers, pamphlets and sermons. These tales often bear little resemblance to reality. They depict brothels as dens of unbridled sin, or as tragic prisons from which women can never escape. The truth, as Mary knows, is far more complex, yet truth rarely outpaces rumor. Respectable households pass along such tales as cautionary fables for daughters, never imagining that the women they describe are flesh and blood, with laughter, sorrows, and friendships as real as their own. Sometimes rumors become a kind of armor. A woman with a reputation for fiery temper may find customers tread carefully around her, respecting boundaries they might otherwise press. Another known for wit or clever conversation may draw more educated men, eager for amusement as much as pleasure. These reputations are not always deserved, but once fixed, they shape interactions, for better or worse. You, Mary, have learned to navigate this world of whispers with care. Early in your time at the house, a rumor spread that you had once been a governess, cast out after a scandal with an employer. It was not true, yet you allowed it to persist. The story lent you a certain air of tragedy and respectability combined, intriguing to some customers, protective in its own ways. Better they believed that than the plain truth of starvation and sewing needles. In time, the story became part of your persona, a shadow you carried but also controlled. The women, too, are shaped by what they choose to reveal or conceal among themselves. Trust grows slowly in such a place where every confession risks being retold with embellishment. Yet bonds do form, often through the quiet sharing of truth beneath the veil of rumor. One evening, Lily admitted softly that the story she told customers, that she came from a grand family who cast her out for love, was invention. In truth, she had left a factory, her hearing dulled by the ceaseless clatter of looms. You listened, offering no judgment, and in that moment, friendship deepened. Rumors also act as warnings. Tales circulate of girls taken ill in rival houses, of police raids in districts less fortunate, of madams who cheat their workers of wages. Each story, whether embroidered or not, carries a kernel of knowledge that may protect those who hear it. The women learn to sift truth from embellishment, to read between words, and to trust instinct as much as evidence. Sometimes, however, rumors take on a life of their own, untethered from any truths. A man may claim to have seen one of the girls in an unseemly place, or whisper that she carries disease. Such talk can spread quickly, and once spoken, it is nearly impossible to erase. The damage lingers, even if the woman herself has done nothing to warrant it. In such cases, the house closes ranks, defending its own against outside slander. Still, the scar remains, a reminder of how fragile reputation can be. Within all this, there is an irony. The women, whose reputations in the eyes of society are already tarnished simply by their professions, cling fiercely to their standing within their own circle. To be thought kind, clever, clean, dependable, these things matter immensely. Even if the wider world sees only sin, perhaps it is human nature when the outside condemns, the inside seeks order, fairness, and dignity of its own. Reputation, then, is both a burden and a tool. It constrains, but it also protects. It wounds, but it can also elevate. Each woman learns to shape hers carefully, presenting one face to customers, another to colleagues, and keeping yet another hidden deep within. To live in the brothel is to live with multiple selves, each crafted from truth and rumor alike. As the lamps are lit and shadows lengthen on the walls, the whispers continue. Some are playful, some are sharp, some are bittersweets. Together they form the undercurrent of life in the house, as constant as the ticking of a clock. You listen, you speak when needed, and you hold your silence when wise. And in doing so, you learn the delicate art of surviving in a world built as much on words as on deeds. Rumor cannot be silenced, but it can be managed, shaped, and sometimes even turned into strength. And in that knowledge lies a measure of confidence, a reminder that reputation, however fragile, is not only what others say, but also what you choose to make of it. The door at the front of the brothel is both boundary and threshold. Beyond it lies a world that is vivid, vast, and indifferent, a city of clattering carts, shouting vendors, horse hooves on cobblestones, and smoke drifting endlessly from thousands of chimneys. Step outside, and the rhythm of London immediately asserts itself. The streets are alive, teeming with people each occupied in their own small dramas, largely unaware of the quiet struggles and hidden lives behind the curtained windows of the house. For Mary, the contrast is always striking. Inside, the walls hold a strange intimacy. Familiar faces, shared routines, whispered confidences. Beyond the doors, the streets are anonymous and sometimes hostile. The city does not pause for anyone. It does not temper its judgment or temper its pace. A woman in this world can be glanced at, ignored, or spoken about, all in a breath. To navigate it requires awareness, vigilance, and often a practiced smile. Even the air beyond the door is different. Inside, the rooms are warm in winter and cool in summer, a carefully managed microcosm. Outside, the wind whips around corners, carrying coal smoke, horse manure, and the pungent tang of the Thames. The chill of winter seeps through even the thickest shawl, and in summer, the streets shimmer with heat rising from paving stones. Every breath of the city reminds the women that their home is a sanctuary, however imperfect. Mary has learned the subtle art of moving through this world unnoticed. She steps lightly on the uneven cobblestones, her eyes alert but calm. She avoids lingering near the coarse voices of street roughs and passes quickly by groups of curious children who might mock or ask questions better left unanswered. Yet she also watches, notices the subtle signs of the city's rhythm, the baker laying out fresh bread, a man delivering coals, a horse pausing to stamp its hooves. In these small observations, Mary finds a kind of fascination, a reminder that the world is broader than the house, even if it is harsher. Some women venture out deliberately, drawn by markets or errands. They carry parcels with care, mindful of both their possessions and their reputations. Even a casual glance from the wrong person can invite questions, suspicion, or judgment. Yet there is pleasure in such excursions. Brief moments when one can feel the sunlight on the face, taste the scent of flowers or baked goods, or simply move without the expectation of constant performance. The outside world is a place of both danger and wonder, and the women navigate it with learned grace. Mary often reflects on the invisible boundaries the city imposes. Though she is physically free to walk its streets, socially and morally she is constrained. Eyes follow her, and assumptions trail behind her. Yet she also understands the paradox. Her life inside the house, though stigmatized, offers some protection. Within the walls, she has food, warmth, companionship, and a measure of safety. Outside, these must be claimed daily, and sometimes they are denied. Even brief interactions in the street carry weight. A polite word from a vendor can feel like kindness. A leer from a man can sting sharply. Each moment is measured, each step calculated. Mary has become adept at reading the cues, interpreting gestures, and responding in ways that maintain both dignity and safety. It is a subtle skill, one that the younger girls take years to master, and one that Mary now performs with quiet confidence. Yet the world beyond the door is not wholly alien. In its movements, Mary sometimes glimpses the lives she might have led, or might still imagine. Factory girls carrying baskets home from long shifts, children running errands for parents, merchants bargaining over goods. She sees ambition, struggle, joy, and sorrow in countless small forms. In these fleeting observations, she feels a connection to the wider human experience, a reminder that her story is part of a broader tapestry. On certain days, she allows herself small indulgences, a brief pause in a sunlit square, a coin spent on a fresh pastry, the simple act of inhaling deeply without fear. These moments are fleeting, but they anchor her, reminding her that the city outside is neither entirely cruel nor entirely safe. It is simply alive, and life itself is a form of constant negotiation. Returning to the brothel, Mary carries the city with her in small ways. The memory of a striking sunset over the rooftops, the melody of street musicians playing in a corner, the laughter of children chasing one another. These fragments of the outside world enrich the quiet, contained life inside the house. They become part of the tapestry she and the other women weave, subtle threads of experience that color their days. The contrast between the two worlds sharpens Mary's appreciation for the brothel's microcosm. Here, rules are understood, rhythms predictable, and survival strategies shared. There is community, a network of care and trust, small celebrations, whispered secrets, and moments of joy. Outside life is untamed and unpredictable, full of risk and fleeting kindness alike. Each world holds lessons and dangers, and each shapes Mary's understanding of herself and her place in the broader city. As evening falls, and the streets outside grow quieter, Mary pauses for a moment at the door. The last light of the day touches the chimneys and spires, a reminder of the vast world beyond her house. She breathes it in, appreciating its breadth and complexity, and then steps back inside, drawn to the warmth, familiarity, and subtle sanctuary of her home. The contrast lingers, but it no longer unsettles her. She knows that both worlds, outside and within, are threads in the fabric of her life, each giving texture, depth, and meaning. And so, with a quiet understanding, she settles into the evening, allowing the sounds of the house and the city beyond to mingle gently in her mind. She is part of both worlds, navigating them with care, observation, and resilience, and in that knowledge, she finds a calm that carries her into night. Life in the brothel is framed by choices, though not always the kind one might imagine. The women do not enjoy freedom in the abstract sense, rather, they exercise a form of constrained agency, deciding between survival, comforts, and personal dignity within limits imposed by circumstance, society, and necessity. Every choice carries consequences, sometimes immediate, sometimes lingering like shadows. Mary has learned that even seemingly small decisions can have weight. A smile offered to a client, a word withheld from a colleague, a favor granted or denied. Each act ripples outward, shaping not only her own experience but that of others. She has seen women falter under the pressure, misjudging a man's intentions, revealing too much trust, or failing to navigate the delicate social rules that govern the house. The consequences are rarely catastrophic, but they are instructive, teaching caution, attentiveness, and a certain quiet cleverness. Financial choices dominate much of life here. Every coin earned is precious, and the ways in which it is spent, saved, or lent can affect a woman's well-being for days, even weeks. A night spent on a fleeting indulgence, a ribbon, a piece of cake, a small trinket, brings joy but diminishes the reserve kept for essentials. Conversely, strict thrift ensures survival but can feel oppressive, a reminder of scarcity's constant presence. Mary has learned to balance these needs, finding a middle ground where small pleasures coexist with practical plannings. Choices of trust are equally pivotal. To confide in another woman is to risk betrayal, yet to remain silent risks isolation. Over time, Mary has become skilled at reading character, gauging who is safe to share secrets with, and who should be treated with polite caution. Lily, for instance, has earned her confidence. A whispered story or a fleeting worry can be offered without fear. Others remain at arm's lengths, their motives uncertain, their loyalty untested. In this way, trust itself becomes a currency, sometimes more valuable than any coins. Health and self-care present daily choices as well. The women must decide how much effort to invest in appearance, how carefully to guard against illness, how far to push their bodies in the face of fatigue. These decisions are rarely simple. A refusal to see a doctor may save money but risk worsening disease. Resting during a slow afternoon preserves strength but leaves tasks undone. Each decision involves weighing immediate needs against long-term consequences, and the skill lies in judgment, not in luck. Ethical choices are more complex still. The line between survival and morality is blurred in a world that judges harshly while offering few options. Mary has encountered situations in which she must weigh kindness against practicality. Lending money to a struggling colleague may seem generous, yet it may endanger her own stability. A patron's request may test the boundaries of comfort, forcing her to navigate consent carefully and assertively. These choices carry moral weight, yet the judgment is rarely straightforward. What may appear as compromise to an outsider is often careful strategy, a survival tactic honed through experience. Even relationships beyond the house carry weight. Connections with family, with friends from earlier life, with neighbors in the wider cities, must be managed with care. Disclosure, partial truth, or omission. Each choice affects not only perception but also potential supports. Mary has learned to measure her words, to consider timing, and to weigh emotional consequences. Every disclosure becomes a decision with both immediate and lasting significance. Sometimes choices involve risks. A shortcut through a poorly lit alley, a casual trust placed in a new acquaintance, a small defiance of a rule. Each carries potential reward and danger. The women grow adept at reading contexts, weighing instinct against caution, and choosing the path that best preserves their security while allowing glimpses of autonomy. These judgments, made repeatedly, shape character and skill alike. The weight of choices is not always burdensome. In fact, exercising judgment brings a quiet sense of power. Mary has discovered that even in constraint, she possesses agency. The careful arrangement of her day, the decision she makes about whom to trust, how to spend her earnings, or how to respond to challenge, all allow her to assert control over the shape of her life. This is subtle, perhaps invisible to the outside world, but within the house it matters deeply. Moreover, choices are intertwined with communities. Decisions made by one woman ripple through the house, affecting others' comfort, safety, and morale. This awareness fosters responsibilities, a shared understanding that the exercise of agency carries consequences beyond the self. When Mary chooses to cover for Lily during a slow afternoon, to share warmth with a friend, or to speak firmly with a customer to maintain decorum, she exercises influence that extends quietly but significantly. In this way, the weight of choices is both heavy and empowering. It requires attentiveness, courage, and foresight, yet it also affirms presence, competence, and resilience. Each decision reinforces the web of survival, care, and community that sustains the house. The women may not be free in a broad sense, but within their microcosm, they shape life with deliberate actions, asserting a measure of control in an otherwise precarious world. As night falls and Mary settles into her rooms, she reflects on the day's decisions, small and large, personal and shared. She understands that each choice carries weights, but also that each offers a measure of agency. Even in constraint, she has voice, judgment, and strategy. Even in a world that judges harshly, she exercises authority over herself and her space. With this reflection comes calm. The weight of choices is not a burden alone, but a mark of resilience, to live thoughtfully, to navigate danger and opportunity, to balance kindness, prudence, and ambition. These are the subtle victories that the day offers. And as Mary lays her head upon her pillows, the sense of agency and measured control allows her to breathe deeply, to relax, and to rest, ready for another day in which choices will come again. The day has drawn to a close, the city beyond the brothel door slowly slipping into the softened quiet of night. The streets, once clattering with carts and echoing with children's voices, are now hushed save for the occasional distant hooves or the faint whistle of a night watchman. Inside, the house itself seems to exhale, the bustle of the afternoon giving way to gentle calm. The lamps flicker softly, casting warm pools of light against the walls, illuminating the faded wallpaper and worn furniture with a comforting glow. Mary moves slowly through the familiar spaces, her steps light on the creaking floorboards. There is a distinct comfort in the predictability of this rhythm. The folding of a shawl, the arrangement of a simple supper plate, the quiet check to ensure that Lily is tucked into her bed with warmth and care. In the routines of the evening, there is a sense of completion, a gentle acknowledgement that the day, with all its challenges, has been met. She pauses for a moment in the parlour, listening to the soft murmur of her companions. Some are settling in for rest, their bodies heavy with fatigue, their breaths slow and even. Others linger quietly over small pleasures. Tea sipped from chipped cups, a page of a borrowed book, a whispered story told in low tones. The space is alive, but it is a gentle, subdued life, one that carries no rush, no demand, only presence. In these moments, Mary reflects upon the tapestry of her life, the days of labour, the nights of careful performance, the small joys found in celebrations, laughter, and shared confidences. She recalls the hardships, yes, but also the resilience they have cultivated, the illness they have tended to each other through, the trust they have navigated, the rumours they have managed with quiet cunning, and the choices they have made, each weighted with consequence, each tempered by experience. Every stitch, every meal shared, every smile or reprimand has woven the texture of their lives together. Tonight, she allows herself to dwell on the quiet victories, the moments in which agency was exercised, however subtly, and dignity preserved. She thinks of the simple pleasures, the warmth of a woolen blanket, the scent of fresh bread wafting from a vendor below, the laughter that rises unbidden in the parlour, and the small rituals of care that sustain each woman's. Even under the constraints imposed by society, by circumstance, and by necessity, life carries these threads of softness, these hints of comforts, and Mary finds solace in them. She moves to her bed, the horsehair mattress familiar beneath her, the thin woolen blanket drawn around her shoulders. Lily stirs slightly on the other bed, murmuring in her sleep, and Mary pauses to observe her. The younger woman's face is relaxed now, free of the anxieties of the day, framed in the soft glow of the lamp. In these quiet hours, a sense of protective care envelops Mary. There is strength in the vigilance they have shared, in the unspoken bonds that ensure none of them is entirely alone. Mary's mind drifts gently, following the contours of her day and the rhythms of her house. She recalls the sounds of London beyond the walls, the clip-clop of horses, the calls of vendors, the distant laughter of children, and she finds that even those noises, once so urgent and intrusive, now fold softly into memory. They become part of the lull, a reminder that the world continues beyond the house, but within these walls, there is stillness, safety, and care. Her thoughts turn inward to herself, to the choices she has made, the decisions carried out in quiet strength. She understands now that power is not always loud or grand, it is often subtle, found in the careful management of time, body, and trust. It is in the ability to preserve dignity amid constraints, to offer compassion even when it strains, and to celebrate small joys even in hardship. Each of these is a triumph, and Mary allows herself to acknowledge them with quiet satisfaction. Outside, the city exhales. A wind drifts past the window, carrying coal smoke and the faint, sweet scent of distant gardens. Mary breathes it in, letting the mixture of scents remind her that she is alive, that life, however complex or constrained, continues. She feels the warmth of the blanket, the softness of her pillow, the steady presence of her companions nearby. These comforts are neither grand nor permanent, and they are hers, and they offer peace. Lying back, she closes her eyes, allowing thoughts to flow without urgency. Faces, laughter, quiet gestures of care, and fleeting moments of happiness drift through her mind like soft currents. There is no need for judgment, no demand for performance. only the gentle awareness of being present in this space, in this time. The house, with all its complexities, all its small rituals and careful arrangements, cradles her as surely as any bed, and so Mary drifts further into quiet reflections. The struggles of the day, the delicate navigation of reputation, the illness and cares, the laughter and celebrations, all settle softly within her, threads weaving together a sense of resilience and belongings. She knows that tomorrow will bring more challenges, more decisions, more careful choices, but for now, there is rest. The candle flickers low, the shadows stretch long and gentle across the walls, and the sounds of London outside grow distant. Mary breathes slowly, in and out, feeling the weight of her body and the ease of her mind. The house, her companions, and even the world beyond the door are held in a quiet balance, steady and enduring. In this final moment, she allows herself to simply be, to rest, to remember, to acknowledge survival, courage, and the small victories hidden in ordinary days. The world will wait. Here now, there is peace. And with that, Mary slips fully into sleep, carried gently by reflection, comfort, and the quiet rhythm of life she has helped sustain.